This man has a bleeding teenager by the throat inside a church and he is smiling. The other boy is already down, spitting teeth onto the tile, too broken to stand. The two men beating them are senior members of the same organization the boys just joined. Their mistake is saying out loud who they want to become when they grow up. They want to be the greatest killer this organization ever made, the one everyone calls Peter. The man choking them laughs and says he wanted exactly the same thing at their age. Then the door opens and the lowest-ranked killer in the organization walks in holding a rosary. He tells the two of them that tonight they will finally meet a real apostle. Neither veteran bothers to look at the string of beads hanging from his fingers. The rosary comes apart on the first swing and the beads tear straight through the closer man. He never carried a weapon into that church because the beads were the weapon. The second senior lunges for his eyes and meets a stare that stops him where he stands. By the time the beads finish rolling across the tile, both veterans are down. The two boys on the floor have no idea what they just watched. So how does the deadliest killer alive end up ranked 336th out of 336? 3 months earlier, he is an old man dying behind the counter of a used bookstore. The shop is called Hannah Used Books and nobody has cleaned the sign over it in years. The owner is a lean old man in a red plaid shirt and a black tie. The neighborhood knows him as Mr. B, a quiet bookseller who smokes far too much. At the clinic that morning, the staff tell him the illness has about 3 months left to run. He takes the news the way a man takes a delivery, signs nothing, argues nothing. Then he walks back to the shop and opens it exactly on time. He sits down behind the counter, lights another cigarette and waits for customers who mostly never come. Behind the counter, our hero decides he has lived a completely fulfilled life. He counts no regrets at all, which is a strange thing for a man in his trade. The only gap he can find is that nobody has ever taken his photograph. Shortly after, a girl in a gray school uniform pushes the door open. She has a green name tag, a backpack, and a story about buying textbooks for her younger sibling. Our hero pulls the book she asks for and watches her hands the entire time. The knife is already down at her side while she is still talking about her sibling. The perfume is what gives her away. He tells her flatly that a few sprays were never going to cover the stench coming off her knife. The girl drops the act and admits she is a volunteer, sent to graduate by killing him. She comes out of the same orphanage pipeline the organization runs under the name Yeonggwang. Our hero tells her the part nobody explains to a volunteer on her first assignment. If she fails the kill, the organization runs a plan B that removes the target and the volunteer together. She hears all of it, climbs onto the counter and brings the knife down at his head anyway. At that moment, the shelves blow apart and armed operatives come through the aisles. Bullets go into the paperbacks while the old man fights them bare-handed between the racks. He can feel the failing body refusing him and a round opens his stomach. Blood spreads across the floorboards of the shop he has run for years. The girl is snatched out of the air and dragged clear of the fight before she can use the knife. The man giving the orders is bald and heavyset with an octopus pattern inked across his scalp. His code name card reads Octoman, the boss's informant, and prints his specialty as 3 question marks. Octoman tells him the bounty on his head is 7.6 billion won. Then he explains where the money came from, which is the retirement savings drained out of Peter's own account. The organization is paying for his death with his own money and every last coin is up for grabs. Our hero throws a flare bomb into the middle of them and takes the opening it makes. He gets out of the store bleeding from the stomach and keeps moving through the rain. Sometime later, the old man goes down on a playground slide and cannot get back up. Lying there in the water, he runs through the life he traded away for the job. The boy in that memory is training with a knife years before anyone calls him a killer. The teenager after him sits in cold rooms listening to other people's telephone calls. The young man after that is running spy work in Russia for people he never meets. The grown man is thrown at terrorist cells decade after decade, all of it billed to the organization. He gave up everything he had and this is the number they finally put on him. Elsewhere, in a room under a chandelier, the organization's new boss settles the matter from an armchair. He says the old legend is going senile and has gone soft on his deathbed. Then he gives the order to get rid of him, and nobody in the room objects. What happens between the rain on that playground and the next morning is never shown. Back at Octoman's hideout, the crew is already spending the bounty out loud. A young man walks in wearing the old bookseller's blood-soaked red plaid shirt. He looks half awake and says he woke up covered in blood with no idea whose it was. One of the thugs grabs his hand to throw him out of the room. The hand comes apart in that grip with a crunch that silences everyone standing. Somebody asks whether this kid is seriously supposed to be the legendary Peter. Our boy says that he is, without raising his voice, and starts walking into them. The henchmen go down in the order they reach him. Before the last exchange, Octoman lays out how this trade grades the people inside it. Being able to use an edged weapon, he says, makes a killer third class. Being able to use any weapon at all moves that killer up to second class. And the first class ones, he says, can turn anything at all into a weapon. Our boy answers the lecture by picking up a raw octopus from the kitchen. He uses the thing as a weapon in front of the man who just defined the word. The fight ends with a fire extinguisher canister going off in Octoman's face. Afterward, our hero digs out the last surviving photograph of the old face. He holds it over a flame, still wearing the shirt he was shot in, and lets it burn. The old Peter is dead, he says, watching the paper curl into ash. The one thing he never got around to doing in his whole life is the one thing he destroys. Anyone still hunting the bounty is welcome to keep looking for an old man who no longer exists. Sometime later, a limousine glides through the city with a Glory Club senior sprawled in the back seat. He takes a phone call and reports that the bounty on Peter will be announced officially very soon. Beside him sits a woman in a red dress who treats the whole matter as already settled. She points out that the old man has cancer and is practically dead anyway. Her proposal is simple, that they take his wealth before he goes. Elsewhere, a young man in a red plaid shirt stands in the doorway of a restaurant. A body lies at his feet and he is not even breathing hard. He tells the man on the floor that he got lucky, and he says the name Octoman. Back in the present, our hero locks himself in a public restroom to take inventory of his own body. He lifts the shirt and finds no gunshot wound where a bullet went through his stomach. The constant pain that the clinic gave 3 months to finish is simply gone. He turns his face in the mirror and confirms what the reflection keeps insisting. He has returned to his younger self, and the organization will never recognize the old man Peter under this face. That conclusion arrives with no ceremony at all, like a man checking a receipt. Shortly after, he stops in front of a bounty poster mounted where everyone walking past can see it. The reward printed on it is 7,600,000,000 won for information leading to Peter. The poster shows 2 faces side by side, the old one and the young one. Our boy studies both of them without any particular emotion. His next problem is smaller and more immediate, because the clothes on his back belong to a man 3 sizes larger. He decides he needs an outfit that fits the body he is currently wearing. At that moment, 2 men smoking under a no-smoking sign decide he looks like an easy afternoon. He tells them plainly that the area does not allow cigarettes. One of them, jacket open and a tattoo running up his neck, laughs and threatens him. The protagonist hits him exactly once and the man leaves the ground in a burst of blue impact. The second one, in a paisley print jacket and a heavy chain, pulls a folding knife from his pocket. Our hero looks at the grip and tells him it is a pocket knife and that he is holding it backward. The correction is delivered like a shop clerk pointing out the wrong change. He takes the knife away and beats the man down on the tiles. The interesting part happens after the fight ends. He pins the surviving thug, gets the phone out of his jacket, and opens his banking app. The money in that account was extorted from a low-wage employee, and our boy makes him send every one of it back. He watches the balance count down while the man whimpers into the floor. When the screen finally reads 01, he warns him that there will be no more illegal business. The thug agrees to everything with his cheek against the ground. Walking away from that, the protagonist thinks back 50 years to where all of it started. He grew up at the Yeonggwang Orphanage, a small facility run out of a church, on a scholarship funded by the Glory Club. The scholarship was charity on paper and recruitment in practice. 50 years later, that same charity front has grown into a crime empire that covers the entire city. Every skill he owns was paid for by it and aimed by it. He tells himself that he devoted his whole life to this organization. Then he tells himself that he will be the one to bring it to ruin. Elsewhere, in a hallway lit blood red, a bald man with an orange spiral tattoo across his scalp sizes up an intruder. The man is connected to PMC Bagner, printed on its own name card as the top private military company of the West, founded in 1984. He looks the intruder over and doubts out loud that this is one of the 12 apostles of the Glory Club. His answer to the question is a welcome committee, 3 enormous guards who come down the corridor at once. The fight itself happens off the page. What the page does show is a name card for one of the men, reading Octaman, rank B+, specialty full-body contortion, ranked first in the nation for jiu-jitsu. The next panel has that same Octaman backed against a wall, sweating, begging whoever is walking toward him to stay back. Meanwhile, a bald man with a floral tattoo across his scalp arrives at a private restaurant with a woman beside him. She wears a bandage over her left eye and says almost nothing the entire time. They find a body inside and start reading the scene like a case file. Every security camera in the building has been destroyed. No weapon was used on the victim at all. The man closes the file in his head and concludes that it was Peter. He orders the woman to inform him the second anyone learns where Peter is, and she answers with a quiet "yes, sir." Both of them want him found before the bounty is announced, because after that the whole city joins the hunt. Sometime later, our hero walks into that same restaurant wearing a gray suit with a black shirt and a black tie. Red lanterns light a private dining hall where 4 people are eating without any expectation of company. He walks straight to the table and interrupts the meal. He tells the bald host that the 2 of them have a score to settle. The exact size of the score, he says, is 7,600,000,000 won. The host has the doors locked behind him and settles in to enjoy the situation. The other diners try to place him: a woman in a white shirt and black tie, a man in a dark green suit, a man in a red vest. One of them guesses he is Peter's secret son, another guesses an apprentice. The host offers him a clean choice: either reveal where Peter is and walk out, or take a bullet in the head. Our boy tells them there is a third option available. Then he says he is Peter, and the room stops moving. The claim lands badly because he follows it by saying he also killed their subordinates. The bald enforcer at the head of the table simply refuses to believe it. Guns come out around the room, held by his men rather than by him. One of them drags a hostage into the middle of it, a woman with long, wavy hair, glasses, a white blouse, and a gray skirt. The enforcer wants to know what relationship this kid has with the real Peter. The protagonist offers instead to tell him his actual goal, which is to kill him. The enforcer finds that delightful and orders a subordinate to shoot the boy somewhere non-fatal. The man in the red vest fires. Our hero puts a single precise shot through him first, and the subordinate drops dead before the order finishes. The room turns into a gunfight around a dinner table. The enforcer flips the heavy round table onto its side and uses it as cover while bullets punch through the wood. From behind it he keeps interrogating, mocking the boy's age, mocking his inexperience, still asking about Peter. He is talking to Peter the entire time and has no idea. The protagonist works the room the way an old man works a familiar hallway. He spills chili oil across his own shirt so the red reads as a wound. The trick buys him the half-second where his opponent relaxes. He disappears from the enforcer's field of view like a ghost. What follows is a fast combination that nobody at the table can follow. He opens with a flying kick that staggers the tattooed man backward. He follows with a wide, spread-arm strike that trails light like wings and sends him spinning across the floor. The enforcer comes up bloodied, and the fight is now something he needs to survive rather than win. Inside his own head, he reaches for the tactic he has kept in reserve for decades. He learned it in training long ago, a way to strike an enemy who turns his back believing the battle is over. Everything after that is him steering toward one moment where the boy relaxes. He starts by panicking, which is genuine, and then by negotiating, which is not. He offers the hostage woman as a peace gift and asks to be allowed to walk away. Our boy accepts the terms without arguing and lets him go. The enforcer gets several steps of freedom before the voice behind him ruins it. The protagonist tells him not to forget his last resort tactic. The words land as a receipt, proof that the ambush was read before it existed. The finish is a flurry with nothing decorative in it, and Octaman dies on the restaurant floor. Our hero adds one detail while standing over him, that he was also the one who killed his little minions. Shortly after, the incident becomes paperwork. A report states that Octaman has been confirmed dead, that every security camera was destroyed, and that no trace was left behind. The report is delivered in a room decorated with an ornate stone portrait of a woman's face. The Glory Club answers the way an institution answers. The bounty on Peter is set at 7,600,000,000 won, the exact number he named at the dinner table. The mission is stamped rank SSS. On a rooftop above the city, a shirtless man with an enormous dragon tattoo covering his whole back grants formal permission to kill Peter. The order goes out to everyone the organization can reach. Meanwhile, on a busy street, our hero stops in front of a folding table with a banner over it. The banner reads Glory Club Welfare Foundation, and volunteers behind it collect donations from passers-by. He takes one of the flyers and reads what it actually is. Every donation booth in the city doubles as a tip line for the hunt, thousands of ordinary people turned into eyes. He crumples the flyer in his fist and drops it. The organization is building a net across the whole city to find him. He decides he will come and find them first. Walking through the city that night, the protagonist works out that he cannot do this alone. Taking down the Glory Club needs allies, and he already has one person in mind. He also admits honestly that he is not sure he wants to work with her. The address takes him to a door under a demolition notice and a staircase going down. At the bottom is a lounge he describes to himself as flashy as usual. A woman in a red fur-trimmed robe sits inside with a huge guard dog on a chain beside her. She wears round tinted glasses even though she is blind, and she calls him senior when he walks in. She never looks at him because she reads him by smell instead. She tells him he is young, that he has not been drinking, and that he carries the blood of a killer. Our hero asks her directly whether the Glory Club sent her. That question ends the conversation and starts a fight in the middle of her own lounge. Blind or not, she matches him blow for blow across the room. Mid-exchange, he genuinely wonders whether she has been lying about the blindness all these years. The dog joins in, roaring open-mouthed at him with the chain snapping tight. Our boy wins the fight by shouting the dog's name, Alexander McKing. The animal responds to the command instantly and pins its own owner to the floor. With her flat on her back, she finally gets close enough to notice his skin. There's not a single mark or wrinkle on a man she knows should be over 70. She realizes he has gone back to his younger self and immediately loses all interest in the fight. What she wants now is the procedure. She begs him for the details of how exactly he died so she can do it too and come back young. He does not give her an answer because he does not have one. Turning serious, the protagonist lays out the plan he actually came here to explain. He intends to take on the Glory Club by himself from inside the eye of the storm. The plan is to become a new killer for the Glory Club, hired and trained by the people hunting him. His argument is that the organization is desperate to kill him and will never look for him in its own ranks. She tells him the plan cannot work and she has the rule to prove it. Glory's killer program recruits from one place only, the Yeonggwang orphanage. This new, younger Peter has no file there and no cohort, which makes him a complete stranger to them. On paper, he is not qualified to be a Glory killer at all. Our hero already has the workaround. The Glory Foundation founded its own private school, Shin Yeonggwang High School, and Yeonggwang is simply Glory written another way. Inside that school, the organization runs an intensive killer course hidden behind the ordinary timetable. A very rare exception exists in the rules for outsiders. If a student stands out enough, the program's scouts will approach and recruit him personally. That exception is the door he intends to walk through. Sometime later, a transfer student named Sangdo Kim arrives at Shin Yeonggwang High School in a navy blazer and a red tie. He is popular by the end of the first day, surrounded by classmates in the hallway. A teacher called Ms. Lee flirts with him openly while other students watch. He spends every one of those days doing the same job, making himself impossible to overlook. At a packed school assembly, our boy steps out of the crowd and speaks in front of the entire student body. He tells them his only hobby and specialty is fighting. Then he tells them he is a killer. The hall reacts the way any hall would, with confusion and nervous laughter. At that moment, other people in the building take notice. Faceless silhouettes with glowing red eyes watch from the edges of the assembly, one carrying a knife, one a pistol, one a length of wire, one a bat. They ask each other who the hell this kid is. Sangdo Kim walks back into the crowd knowing the gambit worked. The scouts are going to come and scout him out themselves. The following days at school run on gossip. Classmates repeat that the new transfer student wants to become a killer, all because he joked that he was a killer when it came to hitting the books. The joke travels far enough to reach Yeisel Jang, a heavy-set boy in a branded gray t-shirt. Yeisel is said to dominate the entire Mapo district with his fists, and he has been dating a girl named Yejin for 22 days. He accuses the new kid of flirting with his Yejin and swings a full-power punch at his face. Our hero slips it with an afterimage trailing behind him. He ends the fight with one decisive blow, and Yeisel Jang goes down where he stood, crying. A teacher with a receding hairline breaks it up and hauls both of them away, scolding them for brawling in front of the teachers of all people. At lunch, a classmate named Yoonbyul corners him with a tray still in her hands. She is furious because the organization is now keeping a close watch on her and it is his fault. A flashback fills in the deal between them. Our boy once handed her a photograph of a light-haired man in a red plaid shirt and told her to name him as the man who killed Octaman. That lie was her ticket to survival, and it worked, and it also put her under permanent observation. He answers her anger by saying he needs all the help he can get. He adds that she has already joined his side, which she cannot argue with. Then he rattles her completely by ending the conversation with her real name, not her school alias, calling her Yuna. The next stretch of school life goes strangely well for him. The track team star Jonathan holds the school record over 400 meters and loses it in a single afternoon. Our hero outruns him without appearing to try, and Jonathan retires the title on the spot. In home economics class, the protagonist is handed a paring knife and a plate of fruit. His classmates watch his eyes change the moment the blade is in his hand. What he sets down at the end is a rabbit carved out of fruit, white and detailed and disturbingly alive. One student swears out loud that he just saw the thing breathe. Shortly after, 3 delinquents corner a teacher in the open and start filming him for social media. 2 boys and a girl surround him, threaten to sue him and enjoy how little he can do about it. Our boy walks into the middle of that and takes all 3 at once. They swing from every side and hit nothing but air. He drops the ringleader with a red streak of motion behind him and puts the whole trio on their knees. They apologize to their teacher out loud before they are allowed to stand. Someone was watching the entire beating. A heavy-set tattooed stranger in a sleeveless top steps in and attacks him without warning. Our hero blocks the strike so cleanly that the coffee cup in his other hand does not spill a drop. The stranger asks him why a high schooler fights like that. The protagonist gives him an answer that is true, that he wants revenge on the Glory Club for taking his life away. The stranger says he lost everything too and invites him to join their volunteer club. Inside his own head, our boy is already finished celebrating. He has been waiting for this man to approach him because he knows exactly who Mr. Lee is. Mr. Lee is Glory's killer coach. Mr. Lee walks him through a door in the school that students are not supposed to find. Behind it is a hallway that belongs to a different building entirely. He explains that Shin Yeonggwang secretly runs a killer training class for chosen students, then corrects himself and calls it a volunteer club instead. Silhouettes of trainees appear along the walls, a sniper on a roof, a fighter mid-throw. Mr. Lee stops under a single light and welcomes him to the place where Glory fosters their killers. The first thing Sunggu Kim notices inside the volunteer club is how boring it looks. There are desks, chairs, a few teenagers slouching around, and nothing that suggests a farm for professional killers. The coach presents him to the room as a new volunteer. One girl reacts with open alarm, demanding to know what on earth he is doing here and why he is staring at her. Our hero introduces himself formally as Sunggu Kim and thanks them for the warm welcome. Privately, he notes that the place looks quite ordinary for a killer farm. 2 brothers take the new arrival personally. Their name cards read Yeonggwang Orphanage, Cohort 58, which is the only way anyone is supposed to get in here. Biggie Dokgo is the lean one in a black skull t-shirt, and his specialty is printed as high speed in a row of question marks. Junior Dokgo is the buzz-cut wall of muscle in an athletic tank top, specialty superhuman strength and grappling. Despite the names, Biggie is the younger one and he calls Junior Big Bro. Both of them scoff at the outsider walking into their orphanage-only club through what they read as nepotism. The welcoming ceremony turns out to be a hazing. The Dokgo brothers come at Sunggu Kim together, leaping in from both sides at full speed. Yuna tries to get between them and warns the room that he could end them all in the blink of an eye. Our boy raises both fists and tells the brothers to come at once. He mentions, casually, that he has been in about a good 1,500 fights in his life. Then he drops both of them in a blur that nobody in the room can track. A spinning strike sends one brother across the floor. Inside his head, the protagonist notes that he has been doing this for 65 years. Afterward, the trainees haul him off down the corridor, and the recap of the volunteer club continues on the walls. A grand portrait hangs over the hallway with a halo painted behind the head. The plaque under it reads Apostle Peter. The coach explains to the new volunteer that everyone here is training to become a legendary killer just like him. The trainees look up at the picture with real reverence in their faces. Our hero stands directly beside his own shrine while they explain who he was. That night, Yuna catches him alone in a dark corridor and shoves him against the wall. She saw the fight at his real speed and she wants to know what he is doing here. She points out that it was already suspicious that he sneaked into this school at all. Face to face, she waits for an answer she is not going to get. He deflects by announcing that it is time for lunch at midnight. Then he slips out from under her arm and walks away. Elsewhere, a balding bus driver takes a strange charter job and regrets it. A single passenger in a gray suit and blue tie has rented the entire bus for himself and a huge stack of suitcases. The driver glances back and sees one of the suitcases move on its own. The passenger stays perfectly calm and proposes a game to him. He asks the driver to take a guess at what is inside the luggage. At the same time, a man with a mustache and glasses sits in a train car watching related footage on his phone. He thinks to himself that he never agreed to play this little game. Back at the club, the coach calls the trainees together for commission. The client is Yoon Chang Choi, chairman of the Diha Group and one of Glory's biggest sponsors. A group of teenagers has been kidnapped recently, and the chairman's own son is among them. The job is to bring them back, and the coach makes clear the client wants more than a rescue. A hooded hostage is shown with hands clamped around his head. The payment is what every trainee in the room actually wants, an immediate volunteer license and official status as a killer. A few of them murmur that they have a bad feeling about this. Sunggu Kim volunteers, Yuna volunteers, and the Dokgo brothers volunteer with them. The coach then explains what the first step of the operation is. The squad's opening move toward rescuing the hostages is to go and have a blast at the park. That is how our hero ends up standing at the gates of an amusement park in a cat ear headband. Beside him, Yuna wears bunny ears and stares at the rides in front of them. Neither of them looks remotely ready for what the client is actually paying for. The gates of Palin World swallow the squad whole, and nobody has explained the actual plan yet. Costumed performers parade past the entrance in feathered headdresses, glitter, and enormous painted wings. Park visitors stop to film them while cheerful music pours out of the speakers overhead. Biggie and Junior stand there in matching shirts printed with the word Korea, looking completely lost. Neither of them understands what a day at an amusement park has to do with a rescue. The briefing replays for them, the one coach Lee delivered back at the club that morning. Chairman Choi's son has been kidnapped, and the boy was last seen inside this exact park. There are no witnesses, no ransom call, and no useful footage from any camera on the grounds. The coach admitted plainly that Palin World is enormous and the squad does not have a single clue. Whoever brings the boy home walks out of the club with an official volunteer license. Our hero strolls through the crowd like a kid who has been saving up for this trip all year. Yuna keeps glancing at him, waiting for the moment he reveals whatever he has worked out. Biggie decides the transfer student is simply coasting on connections and calls him a Nepo baby to his face. The group's first real setback has nothing to do with kidnappers at all. Their ride reservations do not exist, and the attendant sends them back down the line with a shrug. Nobody in the group booked anything because nobody treated this as an actual outing. They drift instead toward the carnival games lining the main promenade. A vendor waves them over to a stall crowded with oversized plush prizes stacked in tiers. He has quietly weighted the dolls so that no throw on earth can knock the top row down. Junior tries and fails, and the vendor barely hides his grin behind the counter. Biggie tries next and does no better, which the man clearly enjoys. Then the group wins anyway, and the vendor stares at his rigged shelf like it has personally betrayed him. They walk off with a prize the stall was never supposed to give away. Somebody carries a bunch of balloons through all of this because the cover story requires it. Yuna splits off from the boys because she is starving and nobody else wants to stop for food. She finds a bench, unwraps something greasy, and finally gets a minute to herself. Her phone buzzes against the table with a connection alert she was not expecting. The screen reads that a pair of AirPods belonging to Yoonjeol Choi has come within range. The device is broadcasting from somewhere inside the park, and the signal is close. She abandons the food and follows the tracker through the crowd at a dead run. The trail ends at the women's restroom near the promenade. Inside, a young woman is standing at the mirror wearing the missing earbuds. Yuna asks her flatly where she got them, and the woman insists she simply found them lying around. The conversation ends the second the woman's boyfriend shoves his way into the doorway. He accuses Yuna of trying to steal from his girlfriend and starts shouting for a crowd. Then he slaps her across the face, and when she does not flinch, he slaps her again. Bystanders freeze, phones half raised, nobody moving to stop a grown man hitting a schoolgirl. Yuna answers with a spinning kick that folds him onto the tiles in one motion. The girlfriend goes very quiet after that. Calmly, Yuna makes her repeat exactly where the earbuds were sitting when she picked them up. She gets the location, leaves the boyfriend where he fell, and sprints back to the others. Breathless, she tells the squad that these are Yoonjeol's AirPods and that she has the last place they pinged. For the first time all day, the trip stops being a trip. Our hero takes the location and starts eliminating the park piece by piece. A kidnapper needs somewhere that swallows noise and never has to explain a closed door. He points at the haunted house, and the reason lands before anyone can argue. Every reservation slot for that attraction has been sold out since the park opened. Nobody has actually been seen walking into it all day. The protagonist notes that a victim could scream inside there and the sound would just be part of the show. The building is inconspicuous, permanently booked, and completely unwatched. Biggie stops calling him a Nepo baby somewhere around that sentence. The squad heads for the haunted house together, and the crowd noise thins as they approach. The interior is wrong from the first step. Fog machines run, animatronics twitch, and the corridor lights flicker exactly as designed. Painted ghouls lean out of alcoves at the correct intervals and hit nobody's nerves at all. The ride is doing its whole performance for an audience of 4 teenagers who are not watching it. Our hero notices that he cannot sense a single living person anywhere inside the attraction. An empty haunted house at a sold-out attraction is not a coincidence. The ambush comes before he can finish the thought. Something takes the squad down in the dark, one after another, and the corridor goes silent. Our boy has time for one last calculation before he loses consciousness. The first part of this mission was always going to be getting kidnapped themselves. Meanwhile, the coach is outside the park with a younger colleague and no answers. The students have stopped responding and every attempt at contact goes nowhere. The younger man wants to believe it is a dead zone or a dropped phone. The coach already knows better because he recognizes the method. He names the man behind it as Sangdo Park. Sangdo was once nominated to become an apostle of the Glory Club, which is as high as that ladder goes. The nomination never happened because not even Glory could handle him. The organization expelled its own candidate rather than keep him on a payroll. Quietly, the coach adds that he has met the man before. Then he raps his knuckles against his own leg and the sound that comes back is metal. His colleague stops arguing. The coach tells him there is no time left to lose because Sangdo Park is an old-blooded sicko who enjoys the slow part. Yuna wakes up on a concrete floor with her hands bound and her head full of cotton. The room around her is stacked with suitcases, dozens of them, none of which belong to anybody here. They are trophies, luggage left behind by people who came to the park and never left it. A voice from somewhere in the room explains the chloroform to her like a helpful tour guide. He says the drug drops victims with their mouths hanging wide open, which is how he can always tell. Sunggu is lying a few feet away and Yuna sees his eyelids move. She also sees that the captor has noticed the same thing. Horror hits her all at once as she understands what the tools in his hands are for. He's going to saw off their legs too, exactly the way he did to someone else. Elsewhere in the building, Sangdo Park makes a phone call. He's dressed like a mild-mannered office worker, glasses, dark suit, striped tie, side-parted hair. One hand rests on the leg of a girl he has tied to a chair. Pleasantly, he tells Guangjiao that they are going to play a guessing game while he drives over. The game is how many of the kids' legs will still be attached by the time the man arrives. Guangjiao is the student's coach and Sangdo says his name the way old friends do. Two of the trainees are already moving through the dark building, calling for Yuna and Sunggu. They are convinced the kidnapper will pick off the weakest of them first. What they find instead is Sunggu sitting upright with the ropes already off him. He explains that he faked being restrained the whole time. He was ready to step in the moment the man tried anything genuinely dangerous. Yuna warns him that this is not an ordinary kidnapping case at all. The man from earlier used to be connected to the Glory Club and that changes everything about the night. The title card drops there deep into the chapter, right as two more figures block the corridor. Biggie Dokko and Junior Dokko size up the boy in the gray hoodie. They write him off as just some regular office worker with a dangerous side. Biggie comes in with a large knife and our hero disarms him almost casually. Then he tosses the blade back because a game is only fun when both sides are playing fair. The duel that follows is fast and technical, blade against blade in a dark hallway. Halfway through it, Biggie stops cold, staring at the two knives. He realizes they are using the exact same weapon and he cannot work out why that matters. Neither blade has a cutting edge. Both knives are tricks and our boy knew it the entire time. A name card flashes for the audience, marking Biggie as Yeonggwang Orphanage, Cohort 58. Another card brands the transfer student as Shin Yeonggwang High School's #1 knife fighter. The fight stops long enough for the story to open the Dokko brothers up. Cohort 58 went through the orphanage hell period, a month-long survival trial in a beast-infested forest. Every child walked in with a single bullet and nothing else. 181 children of that cohort entered the trees. Some spent the bullet hunting, some spent it on each other, and some never came out at all. Biggie and Junior are the only two who walked back into the light. That is the childhood the Glory Club calls training. The flashback then names the only cadet in 58 years of the program to clear the hell period without ever firing his bullet. That cadet was Apostle Peter. The Dokko brothers have spent their entire lives trying to become a legend like him. To them, the smug transfer student is nothing but a stepping stone toward that goal. Our hero listens to all of it with the face of a man hearing his own resume read aloud. Then he throws both of them aside with almost no effort and tells them he warned them. Back with Sangdo, the game escalates because the coach has not arrived fast enough. He announces that the price is now one leg each and he means the children. Guangjiao breaks on the phone and begs him not to lay a finger on those kids. Desperately, the coach offers his other leg in exchange, which tells the audience exactly how the first one went. A girl among the hostages screams for Biggie and Junior. Sangdo hangs up in a very good mood and turns to the boy in the hoodie. He proposes one last game, just the two of them. Our hero picks up a borrowed kukri and swings, and the blade shatters against Sangdo's guard in midair. Somebody in the room asks whether that man just broke a knife. Generously, Sangdo offers to hand him a replacement weapon from his own collection. Our boy declines. He reaches instead for a silver serving tray covered in flower petals and lifts it. Smiling, he tells the ex-glory killer that this is all he needs. The tray takes the first sword strike with a sound like a church bell. Sangdo laughs at it because it is a metal tray and he is holding a kukri. He tells the two children on the floor that he will not go easy on them for being young. Then he asks how many slashes the little tray is expected to survive, and suggests it will not reach 10. Our hero answers that one is going to be enough. The clangs keep coming and Sangdo keeps testing the angle of that tray. In the middle of a combination he stops and pulls back for no reason anyone can see. Under his breath he mutters that he cannot let history repeat itself. He says he will not repeat that day, and he will not let Sangdo take everything away from him. Years earlier, at a casino table, a dealer stands shaking behind a stack of chips. She is young, in a black vest and bow tie, and her hands will not stay steady on the cards. Sangdo Park is seated across from her, betting something other than money. Cheerfully, he suggests a game to her and asks whether he will be leaving this place dead or alive. The dealer understands that she is not being invited to play, only to witness. A Glory Club executive walks up to the table with 5 armed men behind him. He informs Sangdo that his little mishaps have put the company in an awkward position. The termination is effective immediately, which in that organization means one thing. The 5 men are B-rank killers and their weapons are chainsaws. One of them narrates the memory. The squad genuinely believed that no single man could beat 5 B-ranks at once. Then Sangdo drew his swords and the gleam in his eye told them all the same thing. What they were looking at operated far beyond an ordinary human being. The narrator says that his life as a killer ended on that floor. A sword beat 5 running chainsaws, and the men who survived it never picked up the work again. In the present, the kukri finally does what a kukri does. Sangdo cuts the tray clean through and announces that the little shield has been torn in 2. The girl watching from the side cannot believe a serving tray was sliced like paper. She scrambles for the pieces to hand them back and then she stops. Both halves have long straight edges now and our hero is already reaching for them. He always intended to fight with 2 blades and Sangdo made them for him. Sangdo covers his surprise with contempt and says the party tricks will not work on him. He does not actually know whether the boy is lucky or several moves ahead. The answer arrives with a pillow. Our hero throws it as a decoy and Sangdo swings at it on reflex. The boy is already behind him with a blade at the side of his neck. Only a hand thrown up on pure instinct keeps the edge off the artery. Shaken, Sangdo demands to know who he really is. The ex-killer works the problem out loud while circling. A blunt tray edge cannot cut through heavy clothing, so the boy has to be aiming for exposed skin. He decides the target is his throat and moves to protect it. Then he tries to close the distance and cannot because he cannot keep up with the kid's speed. From the sidelines, the girl reads the fight the way a cornerman would. The kukri kills in 1 strike, but it is slower than the boy is. If the fight drags, Sungu is bound to win. Sangdo reaches that conclusion at the same time and changes weapons instead. His sheath is not a sheath. It hides 2 smaller daggers, each of them 3 times heavier than a normal knife. Dropping the kukri costs him reach and buys him velocity. The exchanges get faster than anything the girl has seen all night. Then Sangdo shouts at him to die, drives forward for the finish, and his hand stops working. The fingers tremble, the grip fails, and the dagger drops out of a hand that feels nothing. He stares at his own palm like it belongs to a stranger. Our hero explains it without moving. He was never aiming at the man's throat at any point in the fight. From the very beginning, he was after the hands. Every pass with those improvised blades cut something specific, 1 flexor tendon at a time. He names them as he goes, the extensors, the adductors, the median nerve, the radial, the ulnar. Both hands are ruined permanently and neither of them is coming back. Flatly, he adds that he never had any intention of killing the man. Sangdo Park holds up 2 dead hands and cannot process what he is looking at. The thought that reaches him is that this person in front of him is no ordinary kid. Something enormous flares behind him, a burning tiger's face, and he swears to end the boy with the power he was underestimated for. The story then goes all the way back to where Sangdo Park started. A teenage boy hangs upside down while a circle of older kids laugh at him. They humiliate him for sport and treat the whole afternoon as entertainment. One of them waves goodbye afterward, cheerfully calling him Sangdo and promising to see him later. The next session escalates past humiliation. They bring 2 snarling dogs and tell him to fight both animals for their amusement. The offer is that if he wins, the bullying stops. Something in him wakes up in that yard and never goes back to sleep. He starts betting his life in illegal underground games at night. The rush becomes an addiction and he admits that the games worked on him like a drug. He also never once failed to win. The boy grows into the thing everyone was afraid of. Years later, he walks into a kidnapping in progress and finds children stuffed into suitcases. The suitcases have been rigged to gas pipes by a man in glasses named Gwangjayo. Gwangjayo threatens to detonate the whole room unless everyone present kneels and begs. One of the children inside those cases is the chairman's son. Sangdo takes him apart. He forces a live grenade into the kidnapper's mouth and pulls the pin himself. Helpfully, he advises the man that anyone who has handled a grenade knows what comes next, so he should keep a good grip on his jaw. Gwang Jiao begs for a tie and gets beaten down anyway. Bloodied on the floor, he finally recognizes the face above him and stammers the name Sangdo. Then he insists this is not the Sangdo that he knows. The man had fled the organization 13 years earlier and evaded their human resources department the entire time. That night the running stops and he is zipped into a bag and carried out. The hostages come out alive, including the Dia Group successor, a boy named Yoon Jeol. The commission closes, and the narration says the nightmare that ended a killer's career is over. As for Sangdo Park, he was sent off to Glory's headquarters, and that is how the Beast joined the club that later threw him away. The title card for the chapter lands there, and the story returns to the squad that survived him. The volunteer club walks out of Palin World with the hostages recovered and their license earned. Officially, they are inducted as Glory Club Killers, each of them handed a volunteer card with a rank printed on it. Loudly, one of them complains that all this work bought them nothing but a mere D rank. Around them, other members are less interested in the rank and more interested in the body count. The word going around is that whatever the rookies fought out there was possibly rank S. Nobody corrects them. Dia Group settles its debt in style, because the chairman's heir came home breathing. The company introduces itself as the world's leading munitions enterprise, supplying only the best to Glory's killers. The squad is walked through a lavish dinner, then fitted for tailored suits by people who take measurements without speaking. After that comes a private armory laid open on the chairman's orders. There are handguns lined up in velvet and knives forged from Damascus steel. The dark-haired girl from the rescue refuses her knife outright, saying she did nothing during that fight and has not earned it. Biggie and Junior have no such problem and take the heaviest things on the table. Our hero walks past every weapon in the room and picks up a plain fountain pen. Politely, he explains that a pen like this was handed down to him by his grandfather. Privately, he notes that this is a lie, since he grew up in an orphanage and never had one. The evening does not end at the armory. A hostess in red escorts the protagonist away from the others, saying the chairman will only meet with Mr. Sunggu Kim. She delivers him to a private room and announces him by that name. Yoon Chang Choi is waiting for him in a vest and tie, forearm tattooed, smiling like a man who owns the building. He compliments the dinner and asks whether the suit fits well. Warmly, he insists that he has no ulterior motive in asking for this conversation. Then the smile stops moving. Yoon Chang Choi looks the boy directly in the eyes and tells him that he knows exactly who he is. Yoon Chang Choi lets the question sit in the warm air of the private room. Quietly, the chairman says the alias out loud once and then stops using it. He asks the boy whether he knows the name Peter. He asks it the way a man says the name of an old debt. Our hero says nothing and waits for the chairman to keep talking, and the chairman does. In December of 1978, snow buries the ridgeline of Namsan Mountain. Inside a stone room, Soviet interrogators work a bound Korean man over with electrodes. They demand the location of Yoon Chang Choi, the kidnapped heir of the Diha Group. The captive is burned, swollen and bleeding, and he laughs in their faces anyway. Coldly, the lead interrogator explains that Korea has exactly one way to buy the boy back. He says the country will hand over the missile it developed with the United States to the Soviet Union. If the answer is no, the heir of the Diha Group dies on the mountain. The ransom is not money, the ransom is a weapons program. The Korean government answers with soldiers instead. Delta Force goes in for the heir and is wiped out to the last man. In a corridor of silent aides, Chairman Diha Choi is told that nothing came back. His aide, Mr. O, says only that it is time now. Neither man says what that means out loud. The two of them drive to Yeonggwang Cathedral before dawn. Inside, the chairman kneels to the priest the congregation calls the father. Desperately, he begs him to send the best of the 12 apostles after his son. He is a man who owns a corporation and he is begging in a church at night. Flatly, the priest answers that he hasn't the slightest idea what this man is talking about. He does not stand up and he does not stop praying. The chairman leaves the cathedral with nothing at all. Alone in the nave, the father murmurs that the Lord's missile has already arrived in Moscow. He never says whether he means a weapon or a man. Meanwhile, a train runs north through a whiteout with the boy locked in a rear car. Armed Soviet men fill the compartments, smoking, rifles laid across their knees. A single figure steps out of the snowstorm onto the coupling between cars. He wears a fur-hooded winter coat and carries a pistol in one hand. Then the door opens and the corridor fills with gun smoke. Silhouette after silhouette drops between the seats without a single shout. He clears that car, then the next, then the one after that. Nobody on board manages to send a warning down the train. At the end of it, one man stands over the bodies with the gun still raised. Snow blows in through the broken windows and settles on the seats. A bearded officer in an olive greatcoat and a fur ashenka blocks the last door. He is Eugene Andreev, a lieutenant colonel of the KGB, guarding the boy since the border. Andreev looks at the young face in front of him and understands what boarded his train. Almost calmly, he asks whether this is the monster they talk about, Peter the Apostle. That name is the last thing he ever says. Peter cuts the ropes off young Yunchang Choi in the freezing rear car. The boy sobs and asks why anyone came this far for him. Bluntly, Peter tells him that this was never a rescue of a child. He says he came here to save the future of the Diha group. He carries him out through the snow anyway, coat wrapped around the boy. Behind them, the train sits still on the line with its doors open. Shaking against his shoulder, Yunchang swears he will repay this for the rest of his life. He is a child promising a stranger something no child can promise. Back in the present, the chairman explains that he has called one killer his savior for 40 years. He studies the boy across the table and decides he has found the family resemblance. Warmly, Yunchang Choi tells him that he must be Peter's grandson. Our hero lets the man believe exactly that. The gift waits under a cover in a Diha garage. Yunchang pulls the sheet off a matte black motorcycle called the St. Petrus V4. It is the fastest engine his company has ever built, rated at 327.59 miles per hour. He adds that it runs stealth, invisible to GPS tracking and to every camera it passes. A munitions empire built a getaway vehicle and named it after a saint. Yuna stares at the machine in a pink blouse and heels, saying nothing useful. Our boy takes the key without asking what it costs. The call comes from coach Guang Jiao a short time later. He tells the 4 new hires that the Glory Club seniors want to meet them in person. It is the organization's first special hiring in 4 years and the seniors are curious. The branch is in Gangseo and the branch is a church, Yeonggwang Cathedral. They ride over in black suits, calling themselves the vicious newbies the whole way. One of them straps a backpack of weapons on for a meeting nobody described as a fight. Inside, the ritual gets explained to them like ordinary housekeeping. Glory Club killers receive their assignments during communion, and the assignments are called revelations. What lands in a killer's hands is tied to the rank printed on his card. Sangdo opens his slip of paper and reads a rank B mission. A round, smiling priest in a tan robe waves the whole thing off. Cheerfully, he tells them that nobody hands real missions to newcomers on day 1. Instead, he offers them a cup of sacred blood out of a golden chalice. 2 of the mission papers on the table carry the same single word, fight. Nothing on either paper explains who, or where, or why. The recruits are still laughing when the priest swings the chalice into one of their heads. Blood sprays across the pew and the man goes down mid-sentence. Delighted, the priest leans over him and asks him whether he liked that. Nobody else in the cathedral reacts because in this building that counts as hospitality. At that moment, a stranger is already standing at the back of the nave. His hair is orange and wild, his robe is soaked through and his teeth come to points. Grinning, he tells them he has been waiting for the D-rank deadbeats to show up. Shortly after, 2 seniors take the church apart, and the older one wears a cream clerical robe. Scars cross his face and his head is shaved down to gray stubble. A name card prints him for the first time. Glory Killer Director Jang, rank B, 33rd Specialty Gliding. His partner is bald and pale and works with a bloodied rod. Biggie and Junior make the mistake first, announcing to the whole church that the next S-rank apostles are going to be them. Jang takes that personally. Something winged crosses the ceiling and hits Junior out of the air mid-run and the aisle is long enough for it. Choking the boy against the floor, Jang sneers that he had the exact same dream at that age. Then he beats him again and tells him to die and be reborn. Then the director decides the survivors need a lecture instead of a beating. Standing over the wounded, he lays the organization out for Sunggu and Yuna in numbers. There are 336 D-rank killers in the Glory Club and that is the bottom of it. D-ranks get pointed at ordinary citizens, which is the cheapest work the organization has. Above them sit 200 C-ranks whose work is gangs. Above those, 100 B-ranks who exist because killers end up fighting other killers. Above those, 36 A-ranks who handle the assassinations that touch national security. Every rung up the ladder is a smaller number of living people. The organization is a pyramid, and it prints its own head count without embarrassment. Then the count stops making sense entirely. Sheer effort alone cannot get anybody to rank S. Above the 36 there are exactly 12 burning blue in silhouette and they are called the Apostles. Sunggu stands there and lets a rank be explained to him what an apostle is. On that ladder, he is the 336th of the 336. Jang turns on Yuna next. Sneering, he asks whether she wasn't Octoman's minion and tells her she barely deserves her D-rank either. Our boy steps in front of her and asks him politely not to cross any lines. Jang and his partner answer by naming a price. The group hands over their volunteer licenses. That card is the only proof any of them belong to the Glory Club at all. Sangdo is already kneeling between his two crewmates on the tile. One of them has a stab wound and the other is completely knocked out. He says, "Please, sir," and gives the cards up. Outside the church, the squad stands in the street with nothing left to hand in. Their captain apologizes to Yuna and Sangdo for failing to protect the two of them. One of the others jokes that licenses can always be reissued, which fixes nothing. They ride home to a bike through the evening traffic. Our hero asks the captain what he can do to become stronger than this. Tiredly, the captain tells him there is no use crying over spilled milk and that they lost this one. He says it like a man who has lost a lot of them. Behind him, out of sight, the boy's fist closes until the knuckles go white. That night, Jang and his partner are still in the church, replaying the afternoon for fun. The confiscated licenses are somewhere in that robe and nobody is coming for them. They rate the kids one at a time, the pretty girl, the one with no eyebrows, the tall handsome one. The partner starts to say that the tall one's stare was real vicious and stops mid-word. Someone is sitting alone in the dark pews behind them, hands folded. Mildly, the partner mutters about speaking of the devil. Sangdo rises under the blue light of the windows with a rosary wound around his fingers. He is still wearing the black suit and he is still on paper the 336th. He tells the two of them that tonight, for the first and the last time, they will meet an S-rank killer. He says they are about to witness what an apostle can truly do. The senior nearest the aisle laughs and says he has been in this business for 14 years. He adds that in all that time he has never once seen an apostle. Another man mutters that somebody really needs to keep this little brat in check. Mr. Jeong looks the boy over and counts the weapons on him, finding none. There is no knife under the black suit and no gun at the belt. There is only the rosary, wound twice around a hand that is not shaking. Then Mr. Jeong meets the boy's eyes and the laughter dies in his throat. Privately, the B-rank killer thinks that this is not the gaze of a mere D-rank kid. Recovering, he reminds the room of a standing rule among killers. Any senior who suspects a junior of something is allowed to execute him on sight. He wants an opening, so he tears a Bible off the pew and hurls it. The pages fan open in the air and swallow the boy's face for half a second. Mr. Jeong comes in under the throw with two fingers aimed straight at the eyes. Triumphantly, he tells the boy that it was the eyes that gave him away. The rosary snaps first. The beads were never beads and the broken string sprays them down the aisle like shrapnel. They tear through Mr. Jeong's forearm, his shoulder and his cheek in one pass. His partner screams that the thing was never an ordinary rosary at all. Peter does not follow up because he already knows the fight is over. Internally, our hero notes that he has died thousands of times over his career. That is what gave him the senses to read a losing battle without pulling out a knife. He never pulled one tonight. Mr. Jeong feels a killing intent far beyond anything he imagined in 14 years. His knees give out on the stone floor of the nave. Desperately, the B-rank killer begs to be forgiven just this once. Outside, the motorcycle is waiting at the curb with its engine still running. Jiwon stands beside it with the German shepherd's leash looped around her wrist. Coldly, she tells our boy that walking in there alone made her worry all night. He apologizes and scratches the dog behind the ear while he answers her. Calmly, he explains that Mr. Jeong will never come after him over this. Reporting it would mean saying out loud that a B-rank killer lost to a D-rank killer. For a man at that rank, our hero says that is beyond humiliation. Silence costs Mr. Jeong nothing and it costs the protagonist nothing either. Sometime later, a glory enforcer walks up to Biggie and Junior Dokko at school. His head is shaved and a fresh scar runs across his forehead. He hands back the two volunteer licenses that were taken from them at the cathedral. He bows, apologizes for the trouble, and leaves without asking for anything in return. The brothers stare at the cards in their hands as if a ghost had delivered them. A shirtless, thick-necked upperclassman had spent the whole week screaming at them for losing those licenses. Now he has nothing left to scream about. Meanwhile, in an empty training room, a girl in a gray crop top works a bag alone. She calls herself pathetic between combinations and keeps hitting after the word slips out. Our boy waits by the door with a card she dropped on her way in. The Glory volunteer card prints her name as Yuna Lee, rank D, issued on February 20th. She is the 335th of 336, one seat above him. He hands it back and asks about the brother she is always calling from the hallway. Yuna says right away that Eugene is not related to her by blood. She says she cannot see why that would matter to anybody. She was abandoned at birth and raised inside the pipeline like everyone else in it. On a job, she took a bullet, and the Glory staff decided she was finished. One of them told the others to just throw her out instead of paying for her care. She was bleeding out on a clinic bed while adults argued about the cost above her. Eugene was already a patient in that same clinic, a hemophiliac boy hooked to enrollment 4 line. He asked Dr. O how much a single packet of blood actually costs. Then he held out his own arm and came back every 5 hours for days. For a boy who bleeds the way he does, every one of those draws was a real risk. Nobody told Yuna about any of it until long after she woke up. Nobody has explained to her why he decided a stranger was worth that much of him. She grabs Peter's arm and says he is the strongest person she has ever met. She asks him to help her become stronger. In a dark training room, Yuna asks a second time and now she calls him her teacher. Awkwardly, she runs out of prepared words halfway through and just repeats his civilian name. Our hero answers her honestly, which is not the same thing as gently. He tells her she has no physical strength worth mentioning and no stamina to speak of. He tells her she has every single one of the worst qualities a killer could have. Then he tells her she has eyes that are perfect for killing. He compares her to home run hitters who can see the stitching on an incoming ball. She reads every strike in a fight while her body fails to answer in time. He takes out a weapon and lays it flat across both of her hands. He tells her this is the only weapon that will let her defeat anyone in combat. He says it will turn her into a true killer, and she asks what it is. Elsewhere, Biggie Dako and a friend count their first weekly pay as official D-rank killers. 1,000,001 a week, for holding the lowest rank the organization has. Cheerfully, Biggie guesses that an apostle probably clears at least 10 times that number. His friend imagines the 12 of them on yachts, ordering drinks they cannot pronounce. At school, the two of them corner Sangdo about something that has been bothering them. For 2 weeks straight, Yuna has been moonlighting on cleanup work at killers' crime scenes. That job means blood, gore, and whatever the client's people left behind on the floor. She is an official killer now and could live on the stipend without touching that work. They decide she must be saving every one of it for the brother. Neither of them says the word hospital, but both of them are thinking it. A text arrives from a contact saved in the phone under the name Fatty. The message asks for a scarf, which makes no sense at all in this weather. Shortly after, the two of them are standing inside the freezy ice factory in shirt sleeves. Their breath fogs and the friend wins the red scarf around his own neck instead. Yuna is deep in the cold room, alone, smashing blocks of ice apart. Her knuckles are split and she has stacked the broken pieces into a neat pile. She shows them the weapon and tells them it is called a rope dart. It is a length of cord with a heavy metal dart tied at the end. Sunggu had explained that it is a traditional wushu weapon whose throw cannot be read. Launched with a spin, the dart lands far harder than a thin rope should allow. Yuna swings once and an entire rack of ice comes apart in the same instant. The two boys stop talking for a moment, then one of them whispers that he wants to look up the price on Amazon. Bingsu Park owns the factory and has been watching the session from the doorway. His name card prints him as rank D 113th owner of Freezy Ice Factory. He tells Yuna that her friend already paid him 1,000,001 for all that ice. The same friend left something at the counter for her before walking back out. It is a tube of Meosporin ointment, with instructions to use it before the cut's scar. That night, Yuna sits on her bed holding the phone with both hands. The contact is saved as grandpa-like kid, and typing a simple thanks defeats her completely, so she calls him instead, which is somehow easier and considerably worse. Stumbling, she asks what the school lunch menu is going to be tomorrow. He answers the question about the menu without commenting on the hour. Then he congratulates her on finding her true weapon, and she hangs up too fast. Alone on a rooftop afterward, our hero thinks that her strength was always in her hands. The perfect weapon she searched so hard for had been sitting there the whole time. In his own hands is a document with a photograph of a ribbon dancer on it. Elsewhere, a squad of killers lies scattered across a floor that no longer belongs to them. Sangdo Park stands in the middle of it, bare-chested and bleeding, shouting his own name. His hands have been useless for weeks, and a squad of B ranks and C ranks still went down. Then somebody takes him by the hair and pulls his head up straight. A man in a blood-stained lab coat crouches down to look him in the face. Pleasantly, the man proposes a game to see whether Sangdo can beat an actual apostle. Sangdo Park recognizes the face above him and names him as the Apostle Nathaniel. The chapter ends on one sound effect printed over the staff credits. Something cracks and the page never shows what. The Glory Club owns a hospital, and every newly appointed killer on its payroll reports there for a mandatory physical. Our hero stands in that line in a paper gown, holding a numbered slip like everyone else. The other rookies treat the morning as a formality, comparing numbers and complaining about the wait. The exam runs through height, weight, and reflexes, one station at a time with a clipboard at each door. Nobody in the corridor is being tested for anything a normal clinic would care about. Then a nurse lays out a syringe on a steel tray and calls the next name. A caption explains what the blood sample actually is, calling it the leash the organization uses to track a traitor to the bitter end. Every killer in the registry has a genetic file, and that file outlives whatever face the killer is currently wearing. Under the lamp, the protagonist's eyes glow red while he does the arithmetic. His old body's DNA is already stored inside that building. His young body carries exactly the same DNA. One vial, correctly compared, ends the disguise and the war on the same afternoon. Sometime later at Ji-won's place, he admits that he already handed the sample over without arguing. She's wearing a red robe and a cucumber mask with the German shepherd lying at her feet. The room is expensive and cluttered, the way it always is when he shows up unannounced. She slaps him twice hard and rages that he served his own blood up on a silver platter. The dog does not even lift its head, which suggests this happens often. In her telling, he had already picked a fight with B-rank killers that month, and this was somehow worse. He suggests lightly that he could simply advertise that he is Peter and save everyone the trouble. Ji-won nearly comes across the table at him for that. His actual backup plan, blowing up the hospital, gets smacked down just as fast. Then he explains what the building is, and the joke drains out of the room. Shin Yeonggwang is one of Glory's greatest assets, a hospital made for and by killers. It is where accidental deaths get manufactured, where wounded assassins are quietly disposed of, and where bodies go to stop existing. His genetic record is sitting in its data center, waiting for someone to run a comparison. Ji-won tells him the hospital has a guardian, and she names Apostle Nathaniel. Her only description of the man is that he is one sick bastard. A flashback fills the name in. He was born Hyunil Na, a celebrated genius doctor, until a medical accident and a disappearance took his name off the boards 4 years ago. 4 years ago in Rio de Janeiro, 6 ruling gangs controlled the city between them. He erased all 6 in a single day. The elite military police deployed to stop him were erased with them. A tactical team walks into the aftermath under a blood-red sky, and rows of hanged bodies swing above the street. One wall is studded with guns, mangled and soaked, twisted into the plaster like decorations. A soldier stammers out the name of Sergeant Fernando, and then the screaming starts and the panel cuts away. Somewhere in that killing field, Nathaniel walks between the hanging corpses, muttering that he wants more. He asks the empty air for someone stronger. A masked soldier empties a rifle into him at point-blank range, and he keeps walking. Muzzle flash lights up his cracked, blood-streaked face while bone and metal crunch somewhere out of frame. Back at Ji-won's house, she and a subordinate spread the recovered Rio case files across the table and reach the obvious conclusion. Walking at Nathaniel directly is suicide, so they will need something sneakier. The sneakier thing is the protagonist's own plan, which is to make Nathaniel come out on his own. The subordinate works from a parked car at night with a laptop on his knees, breaking into Glory's own servers. The advertisement he pushes onto a public donation billboard was written by Sangdo earlier that week. The text reads that Peter will be paying a visit to Nathaniel. He warns Ji-won that if Glory traces the intrusion, she is the one who dies for a 19-year-old silly prank, not the boy. Ji-won answers that the old man has not failed a mission in 50 years, and that settles it. Word of the hacked billboard runs through the hospital within hours. Glory responds by dispatching a squad of D-rank rookies whose printed card lists their combat power as low. Their actual function is to stand at the doors and be seen. The real capturing will be done by Nathaniel's private army, the Undertakers of Rio, mostly in B-rank killers loyal only to him. Then the story prints a rank card for one specific member of the rookie squad. It reads codename Peter, also known as Sunggu Kim, rank D336, with a single note underneath. The note says previous apostle. The organization has assigned Peter disguised to the task force ordered to capture Peter. Commanders brief the rookies with strict instructions never to engage the target directly. They are to approach respectfully, tranquilize him, hit the alarm, and wait for a rank backup to arrive. A doctor in a white coat demonstrates the tranquilizer gun to 2 rookies still wearing hospital gowns. The reason given is that the man could take down an elephant in under 3 seconds. 2 enormous undertakers in blue tank tops stand behind the rookies during the briefing without saying anything. The size difference between the 2 groups is the entire point of the arrangement. Some of the rookies whisper that they are actually going to witness a fight between 2 apostles. A few of them quietly hope Peter wins. Others hope he never shows up at all. Disguised as Sunggu Kim, our hero smiles to himself and thinks that Peter has to capture Peter. A voice calls out that Sunggu Kim is on the way, and he runs alone into the dark toward the building. Elsewhere in a bathhouse lit blood red, Glory's senior men sit in the water and gossip about the war. One of them says that Peter has declared war, and nobody at the table disagrees. Another admits that people have doubts about whether the new boss is even fit to rule. An elder turns to Yoonchang Choi and tells him to quietly patch things back up with Peter before this gets worse. The chairman of Diha Group bows his head and says it appears he did not think this through. At that moment, a muscular man with an enormous tattoo across his back snarls at the elders for walking all over him. Then he speaks past them, directly to Peter as if the man were in the room. He calls the coming fight his masterpiece against his father's masterpiece and says they will see who comes out alive. Back at the hospital, a hooded figure slips into the East Annex infirmary and silences a staff member without noise. He takes a doctor's coat off a hook and walks out wearing it. Posing as new personnel, he asks a coworker whether they know a Dr. Hyunil Na and gets nothing useful. Internally he notes that he and Nathaniel are hunting each other through the same corridors. Whoever finds the other first wins the whole exchange. Meanwhile, the volunteer club trainees are running their own Peter hunt in the hospital lobby with an old photograph. They introduce themselves proudly by rank, calling their standing 333 and treat Sangdo as the 336 tag-along. They compare the photograph against every gray head that crosses the floor, holding it up at arm's length. Their suite produces an elderly man in a red plaid shirt who happens to be walking past reception. They drag him off in triumph, fully convinced they have found Peter while the man protests. Sangdo watches his own squad haul away a stranger and says nothing at all. The protagonist checks in with Ji-won by hologram and decides to stay exactly where he is. His plan is to remain Sangdo Kim and let Nathaniel come out on his own. Shortly after, our boy runs into a guard posted outside a patient's room. A name card introduces him as Rodrigo of the Undertakers of Rio, an estimated B-rank killer whose only hobby is killing. Sangdo tells him plainly that he is not looking for Peter. He's looking for Apostle Nathaniel. Rodrigo laughs, calls that a death wish, and attacks him in the corridor. Hospital security footage timestamped inside an operating room records what happens next. A figure in green scrubs takes Rodrigo apart in roughly 10 seconds and walks away without hurrying. A light-haired man reviews the footage frame by frame and says that so he really is here. Staff report that the rest of the recording is already being deleted remotely by someone else. Elsewhere, that same man walks into a facility that does not appear on any hospital map. Rows of tanks line the walls, each one glowing, each one holding a body. He addresses 4 of them out loud by name, calling them Grayson, Carter, Sawyer, and Robert. Among the preserved bodies in that hall is Sangdo Park, the A-rank glory threw away and Nathaniel collected. The Eskrima fighter who once broke a kukri in mid-swing is now inventory in a lit-up hallway. The man presses a hand to the glass and says he cannot wait any longer. Then he tells Peter, who is not there, that the VIP spot has been left open for him. He says he cannot wait to strip him down. Back at street level, Sangdo and Ji-won confirm that the whole Rodrigo fight was theater. The disguise was built for it, and a Mr. Kim is credited with getting everything perfect down to every wrinkle. The point was never to kill a guard, it was to spook Nathaniel into showing his face. Our hero drops the doctor's coat in a bin and says it is time to wait and ambush the hunter. Meanwhile, on the school rooftop, he sits down across from Yuna with a bucket of fried chicken between them. It is an ordinary school lunch on an ordinary roof, with the city flat and bright behind them. She has been contacted privately by someone she calls the doctor who wants a meeting at the hospital. She eats and talks around it, picking at the box instead of answering the question twice. Eventually she says that an old man got shot trying to protect her. She adds that the doctor asked to meet her alone, and then tells Sangdo he is wrong about something, calling him a fool. The protagonist works out that chasing the personnel file for Hyunil Na was never going to produce the man. At that moment, someone in a patient's gown walks up to the table where they are sitting. A name card prints him as code name Nathaniel, general manager of Shin Yeonggwang General Hospital, specialty listed only as 3 question marks. The line for his rank is left blank. He looks down at both of them with red-tinted eyes and asks one word, well. Sometime later, our hero is standing in a hospital corridor being introduced to a crowd of doctors as new staff. He announces himself as D-rank killer Sangdo Kim, dispatched for the mission, and the doctors react with delight. One of them says he never thought he would see an apostle in person and calls it an honor. The doctors crowd in around a teenager in a borrowed coat, bowing, treating the moment as a career highlight. Nathaniel receives him personally. Mid-conversation, the apostle catches an aide's hand and smashes it against the wall, grinning, and says his fingers slipped just now. The aide folds. Our hero concludes internally that this is Apostle Nathaniel, and that the man is clearly no ordinary killer. Nathaniel decides on the spot to keep the new recruit close, calling him a great sample. An ally reaches him by phone and tells him to get out of there as soon as possible. And then the line drops. A card introduces the Undertakers of Rio properly, the squad of soldiers out of Brazil, mostly A and B rank, loyal to Nathaniel alone. Then the hospital is sealed. The public reason is a virus leaked on the premises which locks everyone inside for 48 hours. Announcements go out, doors seal, and visitors who came for a routine appointment are told to sit down. The private reason is that blood and DNA are being quietly collected from every elderly person in the building, because Glory is still looking for an old man's face. Nathaniel takes his new sample down a staircase that appears nowhere on the hospital's blueprints. The stairs open onto an underground ward lined with luminous pods, and each pod holds a human test subject. Standing in the middle of it, Nathaniel says that Darwin was wrong. He explains that evolution is not decided by a god, by nature, or even by coincidence. He says it is decided by him. He begins telling the boy that he has had his eyes on him, and gets cut off mid-name by a code red alarm. A test subject dosed with something labeled, A1 has reached stage 4 and is running for the exit. The specimen goes through the guards without slowing down while a red countdown ticks toward the ceiling blast gates. Nathaniel meets him at the gate and puts him into the wall with one strike, and the body shatters into blue crystal shards as the door closes. Then he picks the conversation back up in the same pleasant tone. He says he has dissected many powerful people with his own 2 hands, taking apart muscle, tendon and cell in search of real evolution. He extends a blood-stained hand and offers to make Sangdo Kim as strong as an apostle. Our hero says no. Meanwhile, his ally swears she will absolutely not be giving up, and the two of them plan the only move left. Someone has to reach Nathaniel's office and swap the real cross-analysis results before anyone reads them. The window they have is 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Sometime later, Mr. O reports to Nathaniel that not a single elderly blood sample matched Peter's DNA. Nathaniel takes the news calmly and wonders aloud whether Peter simply does not look the way everyone remembers him. He says it while staring directly at Sangdo Kim. A voice with no visible speaker asks Peter how about he just give up and run away now. Shortly after, the protagonist is caught mid-break-in inside an apostle's private office, an intrusion he timed around the man's hospital rounds. The office's owner wants to know what business a rookie could possibly have in there. He asks why the boy has been going through blood sample results for elderly patients. Then he says there is one thing nobody can hide, and that thing is DNA. While talking, he lifts a skin sample from the boy's face without being noticed. A tablet reports back that the skin genuinely belongs to a teenager. He crushes the screen in his hand and whispers a single name, Peter. Years earlier, in a lawless underground arena, a banner crowns a champion. A fighter in a white coat is put against the world's title holders one after another. A name card presents Carter Forgeman, known as the Slasher, king of Mexico's underground arena, specialty listed as Kicks of Death. He goes down. A bare-fisted brawler billed as the strongest fists in the world goes down after him. An armed gang goes down together. The fighter ends up standing in a blood-soaked coat over every opponent worth beating, holding a weapon he no longer needs. Every victory buys him the same taunt that he will never be the best. He grabs a dying rival by the throat and demands to know who this Peter is that nobody will stop mentioning. Nobody gives him an answer. What eats at him is that he is the only person in the industry who has never met the man. Every title he takes gets measured against a name he has never been allowed to see. He decides that if he is going to become the strongest man in the world, he is going to need to find Peter himself. Back in the present, the doctor tells Mr. O to bring him their little friend. He collects several disguised operatives on the hospital floor, including 2 tagged as D-Rank 334 and D-Rank 333. Yuna is brought in by an escort that bystanders recognize immediately, whispering that it is Santos of the Undertakers and that he is an A-Rank. Santos tells her the doctor would like to see her now. In private, the doctor lays out his suspicion. She survived an attack from A-Rank killer Sangdo Park, which he finds difficult to accept as luck. He asks whether she struck a secret deal with Peter, and whether she has been spying for him this whole time. Then he produces his real instrument. He shows her a photograph of her dying younger brother Eugene, whose hemophilia the hospital can treat with an experimental serum worth roughly $4 million. He tells her to bring Peter to the clock tower at 2 o'clock on the 24th. To make the arrangement clear, he presses down on her already injured arm until she stops arguing and then threatens her again in case she refuses. Alone afterward, Yuna works through what she owes and to whom. Sangdo has been protecting her without ever saying so. An exposure would kill her, Eugene and Sangdo together. She lands on the only line she can still hold, which is that if she plays her cards right, Eugene survives. At that moment, our boy barges into her room over some trivial pretext and notices the broken arm immediately. She reluctantly sets the meeting he was always going to attend anyway. On the 24th, a hospital billboard announces that Peter will be paying a visit to Nathaniel. The doctor watches the lobby fill and gloats over a radio link that he cannot wait to meet Peter. The lobby clock walks toward 2 in the afternoon while Yuna waits underneath it. The doors open on schedule and Sangdo comes in with his jaw set. Earlier that day, Eugene video called his sister from his hospital bed and teased her about having a boyfriend. Then he admitted the thing actually bothering him, which is that he is scared to get on a plane. He wants to see the World Cup in 3 years and does not believe his body will let him. The whole call is a boy in a hospital gown planning a trip he has no reason to expect. Yuna tells him the doctor has developed a new cure and that he will never be sick again. She says it in the voice people use when the sentence has to be true. Back in the lobby, she stops a man in a doctor's coat and asks him where Peter is. His face changes into a grin under teal hair, and a confused Yuna calls him Sangdo because that is who she was expecting. In flashback, Sangdo stands alone in the rain at an outdoor clock tower waiting for a girl who never came. The rain intercuts with everything that built between them: shared meals, the amusement park, the afternoon they spent detained together by riot police. Alone with the man she now addresses as Dr. Nathaniel, Yuna stops performing. She confesses that she lied about seeing that old man and begs to work the debt off some other way. Nathaniel throws her to the floor and tells her coldly that she was not able to bring him Peter, and what a shame that is. As his men move in to seize her, a fire alarm goes off and the building empties. Staff and patients pour toward the exits and a heavily bandaged Biggie Dokgo hobbles out with them. Nathaniel lifts his head and remarks that he does not smell any fire. He concludes that anyone still standing in the lobby is either an imposter or a killer. Sangdo, who pulled the alarm himself, walks out toward the group Nathaniel has assembled. He tells them he assumes they are all killers who came here to kill him. The first men sent at him are brushed aside without effort. Nathaniel, who clearly knows him personally, asks whether the boy came to save Yuna. Then he warns him that nobody takes on the undertakers of Rio. In flashback, the squad comes out of a Brazilian favela nicknamed the City of Funerals. The average child there does not live past 16. Out of that place they rose to dominate kidnapping, drugs, and prostitution across the country. Nathaniel says he has gathered 100 of the gang's strongest members inside this hospital. An aerial panel drops the count into the lobby and the balconies, with one boy standing small at the bottom of the frame. Nathaniel reminds him that he once called him a tiger cub with potential, and offers again to raise him right. Our hero shrugs the offer off without discussing it. Two attackers named on their cards as Raphael and Sao Paulo, both estimated B rank, leap at him from above while sneering at the little D rank. He cuts them out of the air in one motion without looking, and every strike lands on a vital point. Blood sprays across the lobby floor as the bodies come down around him in the same second. The weapon he used is the fountain pen he chose over a rack of guns at the Diha dinner. Nathaniel, bleeding now himself, demands to know how that was possible. Gripping the pen with blood running off the nib, the boy asks him a question of his own. He asks whether Nathaniel still sees a little tiger cub standing in front of him. Nathaniel never answers the question about the tiger cub. Instead, the doctor starts talking about wounds, and about how fast each kind of them kills a man. He explains that some injuries empty a body in minutes while others take a patient hours to finish. Calmly, he tells our hero that 100 killers are waiting for him inside this building. Then he asks whether the boy can survive against all of them for 100 minutes. The corridor ahead is already packed with men in blue hospital scrubs holding knives. Our boy answers that he has been dying for exactly this moment. He walks into the corridor without waiting for a single one of them to come forward. The killers tell each other that tonight they will avenge the sacrifices of their brothers. From a balcony above, Yuna watches the mob close around him and goes pale. She thinks that even for Sangdo this many bodies in one hallway is dangerous. A bald, bearded killer steps out of the pack and talks down to the disguised doctor. He says his men see death all around them every single day of their lives. He sneers that the doctors upstairs have lived a cushy life and understand nothing about it. He adds that he and his comrades grew up together from the day they were born. Our hero listens to all of it while sliding around the first knives thrown at him. He is not hunting for a fight yet, he is reading the shape of the room. Blockers seal off both ends of the corridor and push him back toward the far wall. Instead of drawing a weapon, he tears a fire hose off its mounting bracket. He opens the valve and blasts the front rank with a jet of pressurized water. Men slip, stumble backward, and pile into one another, trying to keep their footing. Watching from above, Nathaniel scoffs that nobody has ever killed a man with a fire hose. The doctor keeps laughing until he notices where the water on the floor has pooled. Our boy was never pushing them back, he was herding them into a single corner. Every killer in that corner now stands ankle deep in the same spreading puddle. He pulls a crash cart out of the ward and lifts the defibrillator paddles off it. He charges the machine, holds it a moment, and drives the current into the water. The whole group convulses and drops in one shock, weapons clattering across the wet tiles. Above the bodies, Nathaniel applauds slowly and says the boy continues to impress him. Out loud, the doctor walks himself through the trick for anyone still standing to hear. He points at the puddle, then at the paddles, and calls the combination amazing work. He explains that the water and the paddles were never two ideas, they were one plan. Our hero does not acknowledge the praise and goes straight for the next group. The survivors have backed up past the nurse's station and are trying to reform a line. On a wall rack he finds a chart stamped as confidential information for staff only. It is a body diagram with every fatal point on a human being marked in red. He holds it up and mocks the survivors for calling themselves hospital personnel. He tells them they have worked here for years without learning their own anatomy. Then he draws the fountain pen and taps the side of his own neck with it. He tells them a carotid stab will be the listed reason of death on all their autopsy charts. The melee that follows takes seconds and the pen finds the same point every time. Blood sprays across gurneys and monitors as the last blockers fall in a heap. One of them thinks on his way down that he underestimated the boy far too late. He admits to himself that this was never someone their group could have taken down. Up on the balcony, Yuna cannot look away from what is happening below her. In her memory, she is a schoolgirl hearing the same rumors everyone in the pipeline repeats. People spoke of the strongest man in the world, a killer who fought 1,000 men alone. She remembers going to a used bookstore and finding only a stooped old man behind the counter. The shop smelled of paper and cigarettes, and the shelves had not been dusted in years. The man she met there struck her as ordinary, a stubborn fighter and nothing more than that. He was nothing like the illustrious killer who had supposedly fought 1,000 men on his own. Watching the corridor now, she wonders whether the rumors were true after all. She wonders whether this is what Peter really looks like when nobody is holding him back. Back on the killing floor, Nathaniel comes down the stairs into the wreckage. He steps over the bodies without hurrying and checks the time on the wall. His shoes leave prints in the water and he does not look down at any face. He tells our hero it took him 13 minutes to take down 100 men. Then he says almost kindly that he hates to break the news, but he is not done. He climbs onto a railing above the ward and crouches there like a bird. He offers the boy a choice and asks whether he should come down or be come for. Nathaniel never finishes the sentence. Our hero drives an explosive upward strike through the space between them. The blast tears through the railing and blows a hole clean through the ceiling above it. Nathaniel walks out of the smoke with his glasses cracked and his eyes glowing red. Grinning, he tells the boy he can probably guess which of the two answers he picked. In the corridor after that, the doctor straightens up out of a polite little bow. He asks how a supposed D-rank killer can possibly fight the way this one fights. He says out loud that it is strange the boy is registered as a D-rank at all. Then he offers a riddle about the fine line between confidence and arrogance. He is still speaking when he attacks, and the first blow lifts our hero off the ground. The boy travels the length of the hallway and folds against a wall of medical cabinets. Nathaniel keeps hitting and each strike arrives before the last one has finished landing. From the balcony, Yuna searches for a stairwell, a ladder, anything that gets her down there. She shouts at Sangdo to run away and her voice cracks halfway through his name. She tells herself the doctor is too strong and that Sangdo could actually die here. Between combinations, Nathaniel takes a small vial out of his coat pocket. He injects himself in the neck without slowing down and his eyes turn white. Watching that, Yuna wonders whether the man fighting her friend is even human anymore. Nathaniel drives the fight sideways into an open elevator shaft and lets the car take them both. The elevator crashes down through floor after floor with the two of them inside it. Cables snap overhead and the counterweight tears loose somewhere above the car. On the way down, the doctor complains that he expected the boy to be more fun. He says it while holding him against the wall of the falling car by the collar. The car detonates at the bottom and the doors blow outward into a sealed sublevel. Our hero lands in a room he has seen before, full of fog-filled tubes. Human silhouettes hang suspended inside the glass, arms drifting in the cold vapor. Nathaniel gestures at them and says everyone who fights him ends up exactly like that. Then he stops because something about the boy in front of him is wrong. After all of that, the boy's face has not a single mark on it anywhere. Quietly, the doctor admits he came here expecting to meet Peter, not a student named Sangdo. He asks the boy whether Peter is already dead, and asks it almost hopefully. Then the truth arrives late and it arrives badly. Nathaniel understands that the boy has dodged every single one of his supposed all-out hits. He apologizes with a smirk and says he must have fallen asleep for a second. He claims the fight bored him so much that he never bothered to take it seriously. Then he invites the boy to a real fight and promises to put his whole self into it. The story steps back about 55 years, to a training ground full of hazed recruits. A bald, muscular instructor lines the cohort up in front of a boulder taller than they are. He asks the children where the source of a man's power actually comes from. Then he orders them to crack the boulder open with nothing but their bare hands. A lean adolescent in a plain white shirt steps up barefoot and gets nowhere with it. He hits the stone until his knuckles split and the surface does not even chip. The others laugh at him for taking the order seriously and go back to their bunks. For a month afterward, the boy trains alone with a raggedy strap and a stretch of cliff. He works past dark every night and nobody in the cohort knows where he goes. He eats standing up and he comes back with his hands wrapped in the same filthy cloth. Sometime later, the whole group wanders out along the cliffside and stops walking at once. The rock face behind the camp is lined with boulders that have all been split open. Nobody in that cohort ever gets an explanation for it, then or afterward. Back in the present, 3 people are watching the fight on a monitor somewhere else. The feed is labeled Operating Room Sequence 07014 Camera 15. An old man with a white beard leans in close, the word Captain stitched across his cap. Beside him, an older man remembers a story about Peter from about 55 years ago. A woman holds a growling dog by the collar and finishes the story for him. On the screen, the boy is being driven backward and looks like he is losing. Down in the sublevel, our hero stops giving ground and starts walking forward. He asks the doctor whether he has ever been hit by a car. Then he tells him his hands are going to hurt considerably more than a car does. The punch lands and lifts Nathaniel off his feet in front of the specimen tubes. The doctor goes through one of them and the thick glass gives way around him. Fluid and vapor flood the floor as the tube empties across the sublevel. In front of the monitor, the old man in the captain cap jumps up and shouts that Sangdo won. Nathaniel gets up out of the broken glass with his hands ruined. Both of them are a complete mess, the fingers bent wrong, the skin torn off the knuckles. He looks at them and he starts to laugh instead of screaming. Then he takes off his lab coat and drops it into the water at his feet. Underneath, his body has swollen into a glowing, blood-red mass of veined muscle. He tells the stunned boy that this is the legacy of his evolution. Standing in the vapor, Nathaniel flexes and the red light under his skin gets brighter. Our hero backs off a step and thinks that this man is genuinely sick. The doctor explains a property of his body that he calls antifragility. He says torn muscle does not weaken him, it grows back sturdier than it was before. He credits a revolutionary drug of his own design that minimizes his recovery time. Cheerfully, he tells the boy his odds of winning this fight are basically zero. Then he lunges with a grab that would have closed around the boy's throat. Our hero slips it by a hair and answers with a spinning kick that detonates on impact. The blast throws both of them apart and cracks the floor between them. Nathaniel stands there stunned, trying to work out what he just watched happen. The grab had landed, and the boy had gotten free of it inside a tenth of a second. To do it, he cut a window out of the doctor's grip with his bare hands. Nathaniel looks down and finds his own palm blistered where the boy touched it. He tells himself that no ordinary human being has reflexes anywhere near that quick, so he pulls up the official assessment on a tablet and reads it aloud. The chart says Sunggu Kim, rank D, and he openly refuses to believe the line. He says the abilities on display are clearly those of an A-rank killer. Then he corrects himself and says they go past what an A-rank can do. Even so, he sneers that the boy still has not beaten him and never will. He says it is because he himself is constantly evolving while everyone else stands still. He tells the boy to get on the floor and beg like a dog for his life. The two of them trade blows that break equipment across the whole sublevel. Elsewhere, the old man in the captain cap and the woman with the dog watch in confusion. They mutter to each other that this is not a fight between two ordinary humans. Thrilled now, Nathaniel decides the D-rank chart in his hand is hiding something from him. He announces that he has come to a decision about what to do with the boy. He grabs him by the throat and lifts him off the ground with one arm. Then he vows to rip and extract every single bone and cell out of that body. He is still saying it when the counter comes and blows his grip apart. Our hero lands, brushes the glass off his sleeve, and finally explains himself. He says he has been baiting the doctor into escalating his own healing this entire time. Every torn muscle grew back thicker, and the growth never had anywhere to stop. He explains that the swelling would eventually press on the bones and nerves throughout the body. He says the end state of antifragility is a man who cannot move at all. He adds that the drug did the work for him and that nobody had to fight it. Nathaniel tries to take a step and discovers that nothing below his neck answers him. His arms hang at his sides, thick and useless, still glowing under the skin. A caption finally puts a name on the thing standing paralyzed in the vapor. It reads Apostle Nathaniel. Our hero looks up at the apostle and tells him plainly that he lost. Nathaniel screams that he refuses to accept it after everything the work cost him. He shouts about the countless lives he took to get here. He shouts about the endless pain he endured to make himself the perfect human. Then he bites down hard and blood runs from his mouth onto his chest. He admits the stage he just triggered has a side effect that melts his own muscle. He says it will also make him the ultimate living organism. He warns that in 3 minutes this world will be completely destroyed. Then he comes apart into something feral and ignited and throws himself at the boy. Even against that final form, our hero reads every strike before it arrives. He blocks with his forearms, turns the angles, and never gives up his footing. Mid-clash, Nathaniel realizes what is actually beating him, and it is not speed. It is experience, packed into a body far too young to have earned any of it. He has felt this once before, in the man he has aspired to defeat his whole life. He remembers a killer who reached what he can only describe as a godly level of power. For a moment, the old assassin's grin sits over the schoolboy's face like a mask. His own runaway evolution locks his joints and leaves him standing there like a statue. In front of him, the boy's eyes have gone blood-red and perfectly calm. Nathaniel stares into them and finally understands who has been standing in this room. His voice comes apart on the name, and he gets it out one letter at a time. 20 years earlier, a 13-year-old boy in a stiff new suit stands under a banner reading Yeonggwang Medical University. The crowd applauds the youngest student the school has ever admitted. The boy's name is Hyunil Na, and he recites the medical oath in a clear voice. Frail and sick his whole childhood, he had decided that God spared him for purpose. Sometime later, the boy watches a nature documentary about crayfish and cannot look away from it. The animal molts, sheds its own shell, and builds a harder one entirely by itself. Quietly, the boy decides that a human being should be able to do exactly the same thing. By 2012, Dr. Na is a celebrated surgeon in green scrubs with a reputation nobody in the building questions. A gunshot patient is wheeled into his operating room, and the nurses whisper that the man is a serial killer. Nobody in that room ever says the patient's name out loud. Na opens him up and finds a physique that matches nothing in the medical literature. His heart pounds over the table as he decides he wants to analyze every single part of that body. That night, in the name of advancing human evolution, he cuts the sleeping patient's brain open. The scandal buries his career, and the genius doctor disappears from the country within the year. Elsewhere, he surfaces in a South American slum where nobody asks a foreign doctor for paperwork. He uses the poor of that neighborhood as test subjects for a serum he keeps rewriting. Eventually, he stops testing on others and injects the finished work into his own arm. His muscle tears, discolors, and grows back thicker until the shape of him stops being human. He had given birth to a new type of human, and that new human was him. Back in the hospital sublevel, that same man lies on the floor and cannot stand. His spine is shattered, his arms will not answer him, and the glow under his skin is fading. Above him stands a boy in glasses who calmly says that his own decades of training did this. Na's eyes fill as he finally gets the name out, one broken syllable at a time. He whispers Peter, and the man who wanted to molt into something greater dies on the tile. Shortly after, a cleanup crew in blue hazmat suits walks the ruined wing with body bags. They log Apostle Nathaniel and the entire Brazilian squad that came up out of Rio with him. Every record tying Glory's killers to Shin Yeonggwang General Hospital is pulled from the servers and erased. Meanwhile, a van rolls down a highway with the volunteer club packed into the seats. Sangdo drives, and the trainees who spent the operation disguised as hospital patients argue in the back. The twins bicker over which of them is older, since 10 minutes separated their births. Cheerfully, one of them asks their coach whether it is about time they got moved up to C rank. Yuna says nothing at the window because Eugene is still dying in a ward across the city. She remembers that the serum that could save him cost 4.5 billion won. She remembers being told it burned with the hospital and that no copy was left anywhere. Dropped off at home that evening, she finds a bag that Sunggu left behind on the seat. Inside the bag are the vials, intact, packed neatly in foam and cold to the touch. Her hands shake because she never told him her brother's name and he wrote it on the label anyway. Elsewhere in the burned-out laboratory, a handful of Glory operatives stand at attention in front of one man. He has white hair, a hooded gray-green cloak, and a long glaive resting against his shoulder. He asks what the security footage showed of the intruder who wrecked the building. Nervously, a suited operative reports that the man appears in one frame and is simply gone in the next. He adds that the footage makes Peter look less like an assassin and more like a ghost. The word hangs in the room for exactly 1 second before the glaive moves. Blood sprays across the wall, and the operative folds over with the sentence unfinished in his mouth. Coldly, the white-haired man tells the survivors never to use that word in his presence again. Reading the file on dead Nathaniel, he calls it disgraceful to die before finishing training as a new apostle. Then he says he will go and teach the intruder a lesson himself. Glory has a name of its own for the man holding that glaive, the sword ghost. Back at Shin Yeonggwang High School, the coach lines the volunteer club up and gives them their orders. Flatly, he tells them that from this point on they are all going into volunteer service. He reminds them that community service is the entire reason the volunteer club officially exists at all. The squad boards a bus and travels over 300 miles away from Seoul into farm country. They are there to do volunteer work and nothing else, and nobody reveals what they really are. Their destination is Yuil School, a small rural campus with peeling paint and a dirt yard. A teacher meets them at the gate and her name card reads Teacher at Yuil School Yejin. She wears a pink cardigan, ties her hair in a loose braid, and thanks them for coming. The school's security guard turns up next in a gray uniform and a black cap, carrying a broom. Casually, he sends them around the back and warns that the yard there is a complete pigsty, so the assassins in training spend the afternoon hauling crates, sweeping, and digging up potatoes. 2 of the boys work in straw hats and floral pants, complaining about the sun. Suddenly, 2 lone sharks come up the path and start shouting for the elderly owner of the school. The heavyset one demands the overdue rent while his partner smokes and watches the students. When the old man says he cannot pay, they knock him down and kick him in the dirt. The potatoes in his arms scatter across the ground while the volunteers stand frozen at the fence. Then the smoker turns to Yejin and tells her she does not need teaching to make money. One of the boys in straw hats answers that a man's hands exist to protect women, never to hit them. The thug swings at him mid-sentence. The fight happens behind a sunset ridge out of sight, and it does not last long. The boys come back with split lips and swollen eyes, and the 2 lone sharks do not come back at all. That night, Yuna finds Sunggu near the swings and thanks him for stepping between her and trouble. She admits she has seen a lot of killers and never seen anyone as strong as him. She points out that he took down Nathaniel, and that the D rank on his card explains none of it. Calmly, he tells her that when the time comes he will explain all of it to her. Watching the trainees from the steps, our hero notes that the Dokgo brothers and Yuna have both matured. Later, alone in the dark yard, the protagonist walks straight up to the school's security guard. The old man lifts his cap and his easy country manner is gone from his face. He says the boy's half-baked act was never going to hold because he reeks of bloodshed. Then he twists the handle of his broom and slides a blade out of the shaft. He introduces himself as Apostle Simon, the best swordsman that glory has ever raised. He gives the boy his epithet as well, the Spiral Swordmaster. Grinning, he tells the boy that he will not be leaving this place alive. Before the first blade falls, the old swordsman's memory drags him back into a bamboo forest. He had a man cornered in that grove years ago, back when his own name still meant something. The trapped man wore a white dress shirt, a red tie, and a small letter G pinned to his lapel. He never reached for a weapon, and he never once looked like a man in trouble. One strike came out of that stillness and cut the entire grove down in a single line. No blade in the world could block it, no bullet could beat it, no footwork could slip it. Standing in the falling stalks, the cornered man asked him about the size of his own title. Mockingly, he asked whether the swordsman really lived up to the name of the best swordsman in the world, the Spiral Swordmaster, Apostle Simon. Back in the schoolyard, that same certainty is standing in front of him wearing a teenager's face. He reads the boy's habits in the first exchange. The small tells that no disguise ever erases. The blade comes down and it stops. Rain starts falling over the two of them. Then the best swordsman glory ever raised lowers himself into the mud on both knees. Formally, he announces that he, Apostle Simon, humbly greets their great brother Peter. He cannot get his head around the body in front of him. Stunned, he says the man he has followed for decades has magically returned to his youth. Later, the two of them walk out through the bamboo together and talk like brothers who lost each other. The old man keeps his string of prayer beads wrapped around one wrist while he talks. Simon begs to be brought along, saying they should go slice and dice everyone in that building. He makes the offer the way a soldier makes it, already assuming the answer is yes. Our hero refuses him flatly and tells him to stay and keep the school grounds clean. He admits without any ceremony that what happened at Yeonggwang Hospital happened because of him. Then he states the plan in one line that he intends to completely eradicate glory. The old swordsman stops walking at that. He answers by telling the story that nobody outside their generation is allowed to hear. 60 years ago, a priest known as Father Gabriel founded the Yeonggwang orphanage. He is shown only as a faceless silhouette standing in a halo of white light. The orphanage took in children the country had nothing else to do with. Out of all of those children, 12 were specially selected, and Simon was one of the 12. They were raised on brutal survival training instead of school. They came out the other side as special secret agents working for the country itself. That is where the name started. Those 12 orphans became the men and women known as the 12 Apostles. The organization was something clean back then, something with a purpose and a roof over it. Then Father Gabriel took in one more child and raised him as his adopted son. That boy grew up inside the house and began to covet the crown at the head of it. In the end, he simply took the crown for himself. He is shown from behind, shirtless, a massive demon face tattooed across the whole width of his back. Under his hand, the organization stopped being a kingdom and became a filthy house of killers, full of bloodshed and corruption. Simon admits that he tried to attack the man on the day it happened. He was powerless then, and the only reason he is still breathing is that Peter held him back. Our hero listens to all of it and answers with a vow instead of a plan. He says that man destroyed their kingdom and that he will be the one to destroy his. Then he tells the old swordsman to stand back and watch. Shortly after, the volunteer trip at Ul school winds down under a clear sky. Miss Yejin thanks the students for the yard work and for the crates and the potatoes. Villagers in printed orange and red shirts crowd around the group to see them off. A man in a white coat stands among them, shaking hands and saying very little. The disguised swordsman stands off to the side in a cap with an orange logo on it, playing the caretaker again. He carries the bags down to the boat like any other old man doing a favor for the school. Down at the water, the two loan sharks are tied up, gagged, and hung where the whole town can see them. They are told never to bother this town again. If they come back, they will end up fighting an S-rank killer or, well, a soon-to-be one. Before the group leaves, the old man makes his junior a promise in plain words. He says the boy has Apostle Simon supporting him now. If anything happens, he will be there in a flash. Sometime later, in a rural town in the middle of a storm, a hooded figure walks into Simon's hideout. She is a swordswoman in a dark hood, red lipstick, cut jeans, and fingerless gloves, carrying a blade with a blue shine on it. Contemptuously, she calls him the new imposter Simon that Glory took in off the street. She introduces herself as the best swordsman in all of Japan. The old man draws his sword and answers the insult under it that somebody is calling him only the best in Korea. She tells him plainly that one of them is not leaving this place alive. Her name comes up on a card of its own, the Sword Phantom. The duel runs in pouring rain across the fields outside the town. Nearby, in a stand of bamboo, Simon's companion is locked up against a masked swordsman who came in with her. She fights with a serrated purple blade that is not built to cut but to gouge human flesh out of a body. She works his age against him the whole time, taunting him about how long ago he retired. Blood runs down his open forearm and drips off his fingers onto the mud. He answers by tightening his grip and closing the distance again over and over. She never lets the exchange settle into a rhythm he can read. Two hooded shapes watch the fight from the top of the rock face above them, then she backs away and leads him to the edge of a quarry pit. Sweetly, she calls it the perfect place for a heroic death. The old man stops moving and the rain stops with him. He unleashes the technique his entire reputation was built on, the spiral. The kanji for heaven burns across the scene as the strike goes out. It stops the air, it stops the waves below, and it stops even the falling rain in place. The next thing he sees is a hooded figure standing over him, holding the woman's limp body in both arms. Calmly, it tells him that his swordsmanship is breathtaking for a man who put his sword away for years. It adds that if he had never retired, he would have been a real problem, and that it is too late for that now. Simon looks down at himself and finds a wound across his own torso that should have killed him. He cannot work out how it landed or when it landed. The words over the scene name him outright, the very spiral swordmaster Apostle Simon rendered completely harmless. None of it happened. The wound is not real and neither is the swordsman he believed he had just cut down. Her perfume is a hallucinogen and it has been in his lungs since the first exchange. He tries to solve it the only way a swordsman can, deciding that if he is seeing illusions then he will simply stop looking because vision means nothing to him. He is already tied up by then, swinging at nothing in the rain. She tells him the reason behind her name straight out. She is called the Sword Phantom because she literally is a phantom that wields a sword. Meanwhile, at school nobody knows any of that yet. Yuna gets needled by a classmate and fires back that this is the entire point, calling him a bonehead. She adds that he barely counts as a girl himself and the group moves on to the thing actually bothering them. Miss Yejin went on a trip and stopped answering her messages. The last thing she sent was a photo with two labels typed under it. One said a woman with a sword, the other said a bear-like man. The location on the message reads Uri Island. The students pass the phone around the table and try to decide whether it is a joke. One of them keeps typing into the empty chat and getting nothing back. Our boy steps away from the table without explaining himself and puts a phone to his ear. He asks Jiwon whether she is free right now. The old man's promise comes back to him while the line rings. He had said the boy would have Apostle Simon supporting him and that he would be there in a flash. What arrives instead is a box. Inside the box there is an arm and the lid is addressed in two words, Dear Peter. The protagonist takes the weight of that quietly, blaming himself for not staying at the old man's side. Elsewhere on Uri Island, three visitors come up the path from the water. There is the boy in his school blazer, an old man in a cap with the word captain stitched across the front, and a young woman in dark glasses and a cream fur coat. Her dog McKing walks ahead of them with a colored harness on. The island is quiet and none of the three behaves like a person on holiday. The woman digs a buried box out of the dirt with her bare hands. The dog snarls at whatever is inside it and drags a piece of it out onto the grass. A phone comes out of the same box, dirt still packed into the seams of it. Up on the ridge, a scout in a knit cap watches all three through a red-lensed scope. He calls his master and reports that the target is not alone this time. The crosshair is centered on the old man in the captain cap the whole time. Their intelligence is out of date and they have decided that the old man is Peter. At that moment the phone leaves the scout's hand faster than he can follow. Our hero is standing beside him with the call still live, saying he will be taking that. Amused, he asks the voice on the other end whether he is talking to the new Simon that Glory took in. The line changes hands and the woman comes on cheerfully, asking whether she is speaking with Peter right now. He tells her that whoever she is holding had better be alive. His eyes light up red and he promises her a very slow and painful death. The threat lands over the sound of bones cracking and a man screaming somewhere under his hand. Sometime later, a private yacht cuts across open water under a flat gray sky. Our hero rides it in a black suit and dark aviator glasses, playing the part of a quiet aide. Chairman Yoon Choi stands at the rail beside him in a tan overcoat, treating the crossing as ordinary business. On the phone, Jiwon speaks from her console with the German shepherd resting against her leg. Bluntly, she tells him that the people who took Apostle Simon are on that boat. The vessel has a name that everyone in the trade already knows, and that name is the Ghost Cruise. She walks him through the legend of the Kiruryu, a line of swordmasters out of Japan. Their swordsmen were treated as monsters and their craft was passed down like inheritance rather than taught. Then she gives him the part that matters. The swordswoman who cut off one of Simon's arms has been handed his title, and she is now the new Simon of Glory. Coldly, the broker adds that the seat of Apostle changed owners while Simon was still breathing. Our boy listens without a word, and the water keeps sliding past the hull. The chairman explains the arrangement that gets them through the gangway without a search. Deha Group is a name that ship has been sending invitations to for years. Guests board as buyers, and every buyer arrives with one aide and no questions asked. Our hero will be that aide, silent, one step behind the old man's shoulder. Shortly after, two familiar faces slip aboard in green staff vests, exactly against the orders they were given. Biggie Dokgo carries a mop, Junior Dokgo carries a bucket, and neither of them was invited. Proudly, Biggie explains that a killer does not fear death, and that death is merely a badge of honor. They find their master in the corridor and greet him like students reporting for duty. He does not send them home. Instead, the two of them work the decks as fake cleaners, wiping rails and bowing at billionaires. One guest hands Junior a tip and walks off without looking back. Stunned, Junior reads the amount out loud because a single tip on this ship is 1,000,001. Greedily, Biggie decides that the mission can wait a few more corridors. The two of them push their cart past ballrooms where a week of a normal man's pay changes hands over a drink. Cheerfully, Junior points out that nobody on this deck even looks at a cleaner's face. That is exactly why the disguise works, and neither of them has been asked for a badge once. Meanwhile, Chairman Choi moves through the upper deck greeting the guest list by name. Among them is Victor Igora, printed on his own card as Russia's top weapon merchant. The chairman shakes his hand, smiles, and keeps walking. Behind the dark glasses, his aide is counting exits, stairwells, and the men who watch the doors instead of the drinks. Below decks, a drunk guest in a rumpled olive jacket is making a scene. Loudly, the man announces that he is the president of Duseng Group, while a waiter in a bow tie kneels beside him. A woman in a dark red gown crosses the floor toward him with her hands folded. She is calm, amused, and she lets him talk himself out. "Mister," and leans in, delighted with his own importance, and she leans in as well. The sound that follows is two dry cracks, one after the other. Casually, she orders her men to throw him into the ocean. The body goes over the rail and the party upstairs never hears it. That night, the ballroom fills for the opening of the auction. A name card prints across the screen when she takes the floor, and it reads codename Simon, the Sword Phantom, Master of the Ghost Cruise, rank Apostle. Watching from the crowd, our hero thinks that it is her and that she is the new fake Simon of Glory. Smoothly, she unveils the night's headline lot, a stolen Soviet bioweapon called the Podarok. The room stirs and one man stands up in a fury. Victor Igora accuses her of stealing his Podarok and orders two men to bring her to him. They cross the floor in suits and a tall bodyguard steps into their path. Politely, he informs them that they may not proceed any further. He puts a hand on each of them and both faces begin to melt in front of the guests. The screaming spreads across the room in a wave. Elsewhere on the deck, the crew's captain and his companions collapse without being touched, and she remarks that it took them a while to feel it too. Then she smiles and teases a second item, one that will only be revealed tomorrow. Silently, in the middle of the applause, our boy asks where Simon is. Later that night, she corners Chairman Choi in a quiet corridor and invites him to a private dinner. The chairman does not get to answer. Our hero steps between them and offers himself in the old man's place. Pleased, she accepts the trade without hesitation. She tells him to loosen his belt before he comes because they are going to really enjoy themselves at the dinner table. A blade rests near his face while she says it, and she never stops smiling. The chairman watches the exchange without a word because a protest here would name them both. On this ship, a refused invitation is an insult, and an insult is a body in the water. Our boy bows his head exactly as an aide should, and the appointment is set. Meanwhile, the woman in red works another guest with the same script, promising him a dinner date. Purple smoke drifts off her like perfume as she walks. The men nearest to her go slack and murmur about the scent. Whatever it is, it does not need a blade to put a grown man on his knees. Elsewhere aboard the ship, a muscular man sits in an icy pool strewn with red rose petals, talking with a woman submerged beside him. Skeptically, he repeats the rumor going around, that an elderly Peter completely destroyed an apostle with the help of 100 killers from Brazil. The ship's radar has scanned every guest, and no elderly man matching that description is on board. They conclude that someone is running around wearing the name, and they promise to hunt the imposter down. Back in a night forest years earlier, a young man in a white shirt and red tie sits with a long-haired, bearded man wearing a rosary. Easily, the swordsman tells him that he would take the bullet for him without thinking. The younger man says the same thing back, and neither of them treats it as a joke. Privately, he admits to himself that he would take hundreds of lives to get his brother back. He would take thousands, and the number would not slow him down. Back on the Ghost Cruise, our hero is pushing a room service cart in a black vest and bow tie. Two large crewmen stop him in the passage and look him over. Suspiciously, one of them points out that there are no Asian waiters on the ship. They decide to take him to the shipmaster and settle it there. Dryly, he tells them that he supposes it is because they are pirates. The two men never reach the stairs. After that, he works his way through the kitchen and the engine room quietly, leaving thin trails of blood behind him. He checks storage, cabins, and the lower decks in order, floor by floor. The cart gives him a reason to knock on any door on the ship. Nobody stops a waiter carrying a tray, and nobody remembers the face above the bow tie. Frustrated, he notes that he has searched the entire vessel without finding a single trace of Simon. One place is left. The ballroom is running a masquerade auction when he slips in with the cart. A painting credited to Monet Martyr goes under the hammer, and the bidding climbs fast. Signor Forsari of House Forsari takes it for $1.35 million. The crowd claps politely, gloves muffling the sound, and the bidder never lowers his mask. A blonde woman in a beret leans toward a man in a turban and compares notes on the next lot. Nobody in that room is here for paintings, and the paddles have barely moved all night. The auctioneer lets the anticipation sit, then moves on to the highlight of the evening. Then the chains come down from the ceiling. A bound, half-naked man hangs above the stage with his head slumped forward. Grandly, she announces him as Glory Club's ultimate Blade and the former apostle once known as Simon. She reminds the room that he was called the best swordsman of the entire world, the Spiral Swordmaster. A guest near the front asks whether that is just a dead body. She ignores the question and speaks directly to a man she cannot see. Sweetly, she says she knows he is watching and that his blood must be boiling right now. Her eyes travel across the masks, the gowns, and the staff along the wall. They stop on a waiter with a cart whose face has stopped pretending. Triumphantly, she tells him that she found him. The room reacts in two directions at once, shock on one side and open rage on the other. A bald man covered in red tattoos leans toward her and asks whether she found him. Reluctantly, she answers that she did and also that she did not. Insistently, she repeats that he was in the crowd. Down among the guests, our boy reads the setup exactly for what it is. Simon is not merchandise, he is bait laid out to pull him into the open. He also has no money on him, and there are far too many eyes in that room. Impatiently, she calls the hanging man nothing but an unwanted hunk of flesh. She announces that if nobody bids, she will kill him where he hangs, and she begins the countdown. The numbers fall while the guests sit on their hands. At 20 million, a hand goes up near the back of the room. Evenly, the man declares that Diha Group will buy him for 20 million, paid fully in cash. The auctioneer's face changes when she recognizes him. Nervously, she names him as Yuanchang Choi, the right-hand man to the boss of Glory. Nobody in that ballroom raises a hand against a Diha bid. The chairman wins the lot uncontested, and the chains come down. Sometime later, in a private cabin, the rescued swordsman lies unconscious with his head bandaged and one arm in a sling. Our hero sits beside the bed and watches him breathe. The sheet over his chest rises very slowly, and the bandages have already soaked through once. Quietly, our hero tells his companion that he has a hidden joker card or two. He promises that everyone in this cabin gets off the ship alive, and he says it like a schedule. Elsewhere on the lower decks, two undercover cleaners lounge in sunglasses, gold chains, and designer shirts. Boastfully, they remind each other that they came into this business to become legendary killers like Peter. Their handler reminds them of that dream, then tells them something dangerous is happening aboard this ship. He assigns them a special task of a rank caliber, and a silhouette walks toward a door. Back in the past, two trainees in black uniforms sit together after training. Tiredly, the one carrying a sheathed sword says he wishes he could live an ordinary school life. His companion turns that into a plan on the spot. Earnestly, he proposes that they build their own school instead, for the ones with no money, no parents, and no home. The swordsman answers flatly that his brother should absolutely not do that. Meanwhile, in the ship's office, the auction has become an argument. Furiously, she says that Choi ruined her plan and that the man walked out with her bait. The bald tattooed man tells her to calm down and calls her babe. She warns him that killing Yuanchang Choi without the permission of the boss at Glory is suicide. He overrules her anyway. Coldly, he declares that he is the shipmaster and that everyone aboard answers to him. He gives the order to kill the Spiral Swordmaster and Yuanchang Choi both. Confidently, he reasons that Peter will eventually come crawling out on his own. Shortly after, the corridor outside the chairman's suite fills with men in dark suits. 9 or 10 handguns come up at once, and a blonde man in a tie walks to the front. Mockingly, he complains about the hospitality on the ship and about tea that was served at the wrong temperature. Then he demands that the servant hand over the VIP he is guarding. Our hero is holding a serving tray with nothing on it but 2 pepper shakers. Calmly, he tells them to come at him. He adds that he is about to show them exactly how vicious these little pepper shakers can be. The 10 gunmen tighten their circle, and the protagonist walks straight into the middle of it. Packed that close together, not one of them can fire without putting a bullet through a colleague. He crosses the ring in a single unbroken line and strikes temples as he passes. The metal cap of a pepper shaker lands on bone with a flat, ugly sound. Casually, our hero remarks that a shaker cap can be leagues more powerful than any bullet. Halfway through the circle, he cracks one of the shakers open above their heads. Pepper bursts across the corridor in a burning cloud and the survivors start firing blind. Their shots go into the walls, into the carpet, into each other. Moments later, all 10 men are down and the hallway is quiet again. He sets the 2 shakers back on his serving tray and straightens his vest. Behind him, the restaurant floor is covered with dark suits and dropped handguns. The staff who were hiding under the tables start crawling out and running for the doors. By the time anyone reports it, the news has already turned into a sentence with a name in it. Back aboard the ship, a bald aide runs in and reports that all 10 of them are dead. She picked those 10 herself and she sent them to collect Yunchang Choi. Now they are lying on a restaurant floor with their skulls caved in. The radio traffic gets worse by the minute after that. One report places Peter at the restaurant. The next one places him at the pool at the same hour. Then the casino calls in, then the control room, then the engine room, then the East Wing lobby. Her radio operators keep reading out sightings that cannot all be true at once. Furious, she orders her people to find out who exactly is wreaking havoc on her ship. She shouts for a man named Hamir to round up every bodyguard she has. Her cigarette burns down to the filter while nobody manages to give her an answer. The one thing nobody says out loud is that a single man cannot be in 6 rooms. Meanwhile, 2 of the protagonist's agents watch the panic build from the edge of a lounge. Quietly, they agree with each other that all of this is part of the big plan. One of them wears a gold chain with a letter G hanging off it. They lean toward a group of guests in fur coats and sunglasses and hand them a story. According to them, the woman running this ship intends to murder every VIP member aboard. The second man does the talking in a green polo and a loose blazer. The guests take it seriously because they paid a great deal of money to be here. Nobody in a fur coat asks for a source and nobody checks with the crew. Elsewhere on the same deck, Biggie Dokko pushes a cleaning cart in a green custodian uniform. His partner walks beside him with a mop and the same green uniform. Together they whisper the identical rumor to a blonde guest in a black tuxedo and a red bow tie. The next man they reach wears a white robe and a headscarf, and he listens very carefully. Within the hour, the story is moving through the waiters, the cleaners, and the card dealers. Biggie wants to jump straight to the next stage of the job. Patiently, his partner reminds him that Sangdo told them to wait for a signal first. Shortly after, a single gunshot cracks somewhere below decks. That is the signal. The custodians fan out and start telling everyone that some old Asian man is fighting the ship's crew. Then they add the part that actually matters, which is that Peter is aboard. Guests begin dragging suitcases toward stairwells that nobody has told them to use. Ship security tries to calm the corridors and gets absolutely nowhere. Bitterly, one of the guards admits that the VIPs simply will not trust them anymore. The most expensive floating hotel in the world becomes a rumor mill in under an hour. Not one of the guards understands that the panic was assembled on purpose, room by room. At that moment, the master walks into a hall with her bodyguards fanned out around her. A fist comes out of the crowd and lands square on her face. Her bodyguards scream the name Peter as she goes sideways through a glass display. She comes back up bloodied, her gown torn and her lipstick smeared across her cheek. Screaming, she promises the entire deck that she is going to kill him. Her bald retainer arrives with his blazer hanging open over a bare tattooed chest. Softly, he calls her baby and offers to hunt the man down personally. Then he explains his reasoning with a piece of farmer's logic about moles. Since moles live underground, he says, the only way to catch one is to blow up the ground. She takes his idea and improves on it. Out of a case, she lifts a heavy steel canister and holds it up in the shattered light. It is the Podarok, the same Soviet weapon she put on the block the night before. She announces that there are about 200,000 people aboard this ship. The canister will finish every one of them within minutes of opening. Our hero runs the distances in his head and finds nothing that works. The control room sits too far away and the timer is already moving. Everyone on board dies and his own people are standing somewhere in that count. She arms the canister and detonates it right in front of him. Purple gas pours out of the vents and rolls down the corridors like water. Taunting him, she calls him the Sword Phantom, which is a title she has been wearing herself. Privately, the protagonist thinks that a room full of dying strangers is far from new to him. The Podarok was invented in the Soviet Union and it works fast. Within seconds, the hallways of the ghost cruise fill with people running and falling. Passengers vomit blood onto carpet that cost more than most cars. The casino empties, the lobby empties, and the pool deck turns into a crush of bodies. There is no alarm system anywhere on this vessel, so nothing tells anyone which way to run. The stairwells jam and the people at the bottom of them stop moving entirely. Down in a cabin, Apostle Simon is still unconscious with his head bandaged and his arm in a sling. He is breathing the same air as everyone else and he cannot stand up. Our hero carries him out and puts him into the arms of Mr. Choi. The chairman takes the full weight without one word of complaint. Firmly, Choi says the Deha group never lets go of what it calls its own, and that friends are included in that. Watching the boy sprint toward the gas, the old man recognizes the feeling in his chest. He felt exactly the same reliance decades ago, running for his life through the snow beside the same man. He was a kidnapped boy then, and he is a chairman in a soaked shirt now. The man he is trusting has not changed at all in the meantime. Elsewhere, the master lifts a glass and drinks to her own victory. She believes the gas has already finished both Peter and the spiral swordmaster. 5 minutes before the canister opened, the protagonist was standing at the ship's control panel. He had pushed the whole system into administrator mode while a crewman watched him from across the room. With administrator access, he opened ballast tank compartment 1 by hand. Water flooded one side of the hull and the deck began to lean. To a passenger, a leaning ship reads as a sinking ship, and the crowd behaves accordingly. The tilt forces every panicking guest to climb because up is the only direction that feels like survival. Heavy gas does the exact opposite of climbing and stays pooled in the lower decks. He turned a disaster into a staircase, and he built it 5 minutes before anyone knew there was a disaster. Leading a column of passengers toward a deck door, our hero finds it already locked. 2 crew members stand on the far side and refuse to open it for anyone. A blonde passenger in a light suit shouts that the deck ahead is safe. The crew shoot him at point-blank range because they think it is funny. The protagonist puts a shoulder into a steel door built to survive the open ocean. The door leaves its frame and both crewmen are unconscious before they finish turning around. Afterwards, he looks back at the wreckage and compliments the door on putting up a good fight. The passengers pour through the gap onto open deck and clean air. Out on the rail, survivors are already telling each other that the cleaning brothers saved their lives. Junior Dokgo is standing somewhere in that crowd, watching the water. Nobody up there knows the name of the boy who took the door off its hinges. Meanwhile, word reaches the master that Peter is standing in the auction hall. She walks into her own perfume room and studies a shelf of small glass bottles. Her bald retainer leans in the doorway smoking and points out one bottle in particular. Approvingly, she agrees that it is the correct choice for a guest of this caliber. She takes her time about it, the way a woman picks a scent before a dinner. In passing, she mentions that she already used one of these on the spiral swordmaster. The bottle goes into her hand and the katana goes onto her hip. At the auction hall, she finds no legendary assassin waiting for her. There is only a boy in a torn dress shirt standing near the stage with his hands loose. Sharply, she asks him what he is doing there and where Peter is hiding. Her tattooed retainer hoists him up by the collar and holds him off the floor. The boy answers by taking the microphone off its stand. Cheerfully, he opens an auction of his own with her as the item on the block. He announces the lot as the Sword Phantom, captain of the Phantom Sword. Then he describes the merchandise as Glory's rusty, fake sword, secondhand and badly maintained. Nobody bids. He lowers the price and keeps lowering it until he reaches $0.00. The hall stays silent except for the sound of the ship groaning as it leans. Hours earlier, she stood on that same stage and sold a chained apostle to a crowd. The stage works exactly the same way with her standing under it. Enraged, she draws her katana and comes at him across the auction floor. In the middle of the exchange, she demands to know what he knows about that night. The question drags her backwards into a memory she never worked her way out of. In it, a hooded figure with long silver hair stands over her holding a long blade. The story names that man the Spiral Swordmaster, and he was her master once. Coldly, he told her that she still had a very long way to go. That verdict never changed, and she never managed to earn a second one. The Kitaryu were a clan of killers 1,000 years old. Their art was inherited by blood rather than taught to outsiders, and that made them monsters in the trade. Then the whole thing collapsed inside a single day. The Yamatogumi, a Yakuza organization, betrayed them and burned the clan out of existence. She was the chief's only daughter, and she was one of the survivors. From that day forward, she trained for exactly one purpose, which was revenge. A Yamatogumi gunman found her while she was still a girl. Laughing, he explained to her that a sword can never outpace a bullet. Then he made a remark about her body that turned the scene into something far worse. She told him he was absolutely disgusting. Her strikes landed so fast that he never registered being cut at all. He was still holding the revolver when his body came apart. That same night, she walked into the Yamatogumi alone, with no plan beyond arriving. By morning, all 2,000 members of the gang were dead on the ground. The name Sword Phantom stopped being a clan legend and started being hers alone. Everything she is standing on tonight was built in that one night of work. Back on the tilting ship, she fights barefoot with her feet wrapped in white bandages. The wrapping kills the friction between her soles and the floor beneath them. Nothing slows her down when she pushes off, so every kick converts cleanly into distance. She calls the technique ghost feet, and it turns her leaps into sword strikes that carry shockwaves. The kanji for shockwaves burns across the hall as a spiral of purple energy goes up. From the outside, it looks like she is taking the boy apart piece by piece. Two of her people watch the fight from the balcony rail above. One of them, a brown-haired man in a business suit, does not believe what he is seeing. Quietly he says the kid clearly has the skill to back up his mouth. He calls him a genuine threat and asks for permission to make the first move. Around them, the guests who stayed behind argue that a high schooler cannot possibly do this. The bald retainer works it out a moment later. The boy is not struggling at all, he is standing there reading her. Every leap she makes is getting filed away behind those red-tinted eyes. Alarmed, the retainer shouts at his master to stop the fight immediately. She turns around and knocks him flat on the floor for opening his mouth. Then she asks him what she told him earlier, and he has no answer for her. Our hero finally speaks, and he starts with her lineage. He tells her 1,000 years of Kidoryu is worth nothing against the Spiral Swordmaster. Then he explains the mechanism, which turns out to be simpler than her entire clan. Every one of her explosive leaps announces its own landing point before it happens. The launch angle gives away the arrival, and the arrival cannot be changed in midair. So he never chased her once during the whole fight. He simply parked his blade where she was already going to be. 1,000 years of inheritance loses to a man who has watched people jump before. Years ago, on a rooftop above a lit skyline, a long-haired young man sat cross-legged with a sheathed sword across his knees. His companion called him brother and said he wanted to become the greatest swordsman in the world. The technique the two of them were discussing belonged to Simon and to nobody else. He invented it himself, and the world never produced an answer for it. Back in the auction hall, the boy raises his blade above his head. The kanji for spiral slash burns across the panel as he brings it down. Decades of practice arrive inside a body that everyone in the room reads as a high schooler. The strike goes through her guard, her balance, and her 1,000-year inheritance in one motion. She hits her knees bloodied and screams a single word of refusal. Her retainers do not move because there is nothing left in the room worth doing. She is not finished with him yet. From the floor, she screams at her subordinate to detonate the perfume. Somewhere behind them, an elegantly dressed woman lifts a small glass bottle into the light. Purple fire swallows the hall in one enormous column. Vowing that she will kill him no matter what it costs her, she stays kneeling in the middle of it. When the smoke thins out, the boy is restrained with his eyes glowing red. A bloodied voice leans over him and says something almost gentle. Not even the legendary Peter, it tells him, is going to be able to save him now. Inside the burning hall, the sword phantom rises through the smoke and explains exactly how thorough she has been. Calmly, she boasts that her perfume has already spread through every corner of the space around them. Mockingly, she adds that not even the legendary Peter could pull a man out of a room like this. She informs the boy that he is going to die right here on her floor. What she does not know is that our hero stopped breathing a long time ago. He holds the air in his chest, lets her finish talking, and raises his blade. At that moment, he sets the weapon alight and touches the burning edge to the saturated air. The entire floor goes up at once in a single flat sheet of fire. From the far side of the hall, onlookers scream that the whole level is catching. One of them says out loud that the boy has been planning this from the very first minute. Earlier in the duel, he had scattered bottle after bottle across the marble around her feet. Everyone in the room read that as broken glass, a cheap trick to slow a swordsman down. The glass was never the point. He had been coating the floor with alcohol the entire time, laying a fuse under her own trap. The room she filled with poison now belongs to him. She comes at him through the flames anyway, screaming with her katana held high. Our boy waits, reads the angle of the swing, and takes her left arm off at the shoulder. With that arm gone, she abandons the defense of her entire left side. Her balance goes with it, and every step she takes now leans into the burning floor. He finishes her with one clean blow, and the master of the ghost crews drops unconscious into the smoke. Out of nowhere, a tanned, blonde man walks calmly through the fire and scoops her up in both arms. Hoops hang from both his ears, and a dark blazer hangs open over a heavily tattooed chest. Politely, he asks the boy whether he is supposed to be the next opponent. Our protagonist tells him flatly that he has just made a very grave mistake. The blonde man does not take the challenge, and carries the wounded woman out through the flames instead. Elsewhere in a recording, that same man sits across from a hooded questioner with long silver hair. He says that once all of this is over, he and his master will be going home, probably back to Japan. Coldly, the questioner presses him on whether he intends to revive the Kidoryu or found something new. He gives no answer at all. Back on the ship, our hero stands alone in the wreckage and admits to himself that the Kidoryu runs deeper than he understood. Meanwhile, Glory Club members trade calls about the woman who lost her arm on the cruise. One man on a seafront balcony marvels that she took over the Kidoryu at such a young age. Another one asks the only question that actually matters, which is how she became the new Simon. Apostles are chosen exclusively from agents raised inside the Yeonggwang orphanage, and the organization treats them as assets more dangerous than nuclear weapons. On screen, a comparison chart puts her numbers beside Simon's, and she loses in every single category. Nothing about her explains a free pass into a seat that 12 people in the world are allowed to hold. Shortly after, our protagonist walks into Ji-won's console room and tells her that she was right the entire time. Her hands move across the keyboard, and the file she pulls up is a codename card belonging to the blonde man. The card prints Simon in large letters, and underneath it in smaller type the name Keijio. It lists him as a member of the Japanese killer organization Kitaryu, now out of commission. It lists him as a subordinate of the Kitaryu's leader, with his specialty left as 3 question marks. The box reserved for his rank is completely empty. Reading it, our hero concludes privately that of the two of them, Keijio is the real apostle. Sometime later, the two men stand face to face without a crowd around them. Our boy asks him directly why a man like that lives inside the shadow of the sword phantom. Keijio answers with a question of his own, doubting that the boy is simply a bodyguard for Yoon Chang-choi. Then he asks what relation this stranger could possibly have to Peter. Our protagonist gives him back his own warning that in this industry the curious die early. He throws a burning punch on the last word. The exchange that follows breaks furniture and floor tiles in every direction. Keijio cannot read the boy at all, because nothing in that fighting style follows any school he has ever studied. Internally, he notes that the boy slips every strike while leaving himself completely defenseless. For a moment, he wonders whether he is looking at a hidden Kitaryu technique. Then he discards the idea because the movement is pure instinct rather than training. Grudgingly, he decides the boy never actually learned to fight and was simply born able to do it. Out loud, Keijio tells him that whatever he is, nobody ever allowed him to learn properly. Years earlier, inside a quiet temple, a suited subordinate reports to the 23rd chief of the Kitaryu, Yusugi Hidaki. The old man wears a blue robe, thin glasses, and a katana laid across his knees. The report claims that Team 1, led by a young woman in a red floral kimono, wiped out the rival Sekinoryu. Yusugi Hidaki does not accept it, because the crime scene looks like an animal ravaging prey rather than a clean Kitaryu kill. Under pressure, the subordinate admits the mission was far beyond Team 1 from the beginning. Keijio handled the entire thing alone and then let another squad take the credit for it. Deeper in the past, the chief kneels beside the boy and tells him the story of a flea sealed inside a jar. The flea learns the height of the lid and never jumps that high again, even after the lid comes off. The old man tells that story specifically so the child will never believe he can surpass his master. Back in the storm of the present fight, our hero needles him about exactly that. Flatly, he says Keijio is doomed to bow to his master's word for the rest of his life. Keijio tells him to stop talking, and his next 3 attacks come in far too wide. Mid-swing, Keijio finally understands that the boy has been baiting every strike toward his own legs. He decides to pretend to fall for the trap, then lunge past it and rip the boy's head off his shoulders, his hands close on empty air. While he was busy overthinking the floor, our protagonist wrapped him in heavy chain instead. Confidently, the boy tells him that not even a chainsaw would shred through those links. Keijio breaks them anyway in one motion, by unsheathing retractable claws hidden inside his own hands. Watching from behind a pillar, 2 survivors whisper that they have seen those claws before during the auction. One of them describes a man who was touched by them and simply melted where he stood. Immediately, our hero reads the danger and thinks that he cannot afford to get anywhere near him. Keijio tells him that now these are out. He is doomed to disappear without a trace, then he charges. The chain blows apart, the room fills with dust, and the two of them collide again. Instead of retreating, our boy comes straight at the claws and clamps both hands around Keijio's wrists. He is not blocking, he is looking at the open cuts across the man's palms. Out loud, he deduces that the blood itself is what melts everything from steel plate to living flesh. Then he asks the only sensible question, which is how any human being's blood does that. Keijio tells him that if he wants the answer so badly, he can beat it out of him. He slices his own palms wide open, coats the claws in his blood, and gets visibly faster. Our protagonist names the clan out loud. He calls it the Dokahiryu, a bloodline everyone assumed was extinct. Keijio freezes, demanding to know how a stranger could possibly know that name. Long before any of this, the chief of the Kitaryu walked through the drowned remains of the Dokahiryu with a masked subordinate at his side. He confirmed that the clan was officially extinct. Then the masked man found a single living baby among the bodies and asked what should be done with it. Curiosity kept the child alive, and that curiosity became the beginning of one very twisted fate. Raised inside the Kitaryu dojo under the name Keijio, the boy carried his clan's inheritance in his veins. The Dokahiryu had bred poisonous warriors for generations, and their blood dissolved whatever it touched. In training, the other students learned that lesson on their own skin. Instructors began barking at him to stop staring and go clean instead of drilling with the class. His classmates stopped speaking to him entirely. One night, beaten and sent away again, the child found an injured fledgling on the forest floor. He carried it carefully in both hands and it died in his palms before he reached shelter. Sobbing, he understood that he was going to be alone for the rest of his life. Then his face changed, and he decided that if everyone was going to hate him anyway, he would make them afraid. Back in the present, our hero confronts him with all of it in one breath. He points out that the Kitaryu eradicated his clan and asks why he ever served the people who did it. He begins to say that Keijio could have rebuilt the Dokahiryu on his own. Keijio cuts him off, shouting at him to shut his mouth because he does not know anything. Still unaware of who he is actually fighting, Keijio starts guessing. He says that anyone connected to Apostle Peter must belong to Glory, and that he would have heard the name by now. Meanwhile, our protagonist runs the math and finds no opening anywhere in it. Unless he can somehow turn that blood non-poisonous, there is no version of this fight that he wins. Keijio drives him backward through a doorway into a cramped cleaning storeroom with nowhere left to retreat. Standing over him, he demands to know where Peter is. Our boy looks down, picks a mop up off the wet tiles and starts to smile. This fight, he tells him, is going to be very different now that he is holding a mop. Keijio looks at the mop in the boy's hands and laughs at it out loud. He calls it a cheap long-range trick from someone too scared to close the distance. Then he comes in with the claws and our hero gives ground on purpose. Every dodge leaves the soaked mop head hanging exactly where the claw wants to travel. On the third pass, the wet strands wrap around the claw and hold it there. Keijio rips his arm free, expecting the fibers to dissolve the way everything else does. Instead, the sound coming off his own hand is a long, wet hiss. Smoke lifts from his fingers and the skin starts eating itself in front of him. Calmly, the protagonist tells him that the bucket was never filled with water. He explains that he emptied the whole cleaning shelf into it, the Clorox and the Rysol together. Those chemicals sit at the exact opposite end of the scale from the blood in his veins. Every drop the mop carried has been quietly canceling that weapon since the first swing. Keijio stares at his ruined claw and understands that the thing nobody could counter is now useless. Enraged, he throws the claw aside and comes in barehanded instead. He snarls that he never needed his blood to win a fight in the first place. Our boy lets him commit, slips inside the swing and answers with one clean punch. The blow lands square on the hand and folds him, and Keijio drops onto the wet tiles. At that moment, the storeroom door bangs open and a woman staggers through it. She is already bleeding badly, dragging one leg, holding a katana in a loose, unsteady grip. She shouts for her master and comes straight at the boy without waiting for an answer. She tells him she has to kill him first so that she can catch Peter herself. Our hero turns the swing aside without effort and tells her to leave while she still can. Keijio forces himself upright and scolds her instead of thanking her. He reminds her that he ordered her to wait inside the ship and demands to know why she came. Then he says her name out loud, and the swordswoman the whole industry calls the sword phantom becomes Yuika. Years earlier, inside the Kitaryu compound, Keijio was the lowest thing the clan kept. He was born a servant, and the word the household used for him was shadow. Nobody in that compound spoke to him except the heir of the house herself. Lady Yuika treated him like a person, which was more than any adult under that roof managed. She sat with him, walked the grounds with him, and never once flinched at his hands, in his own telling. Those years were the only stretch of his life where somebody looked at him first. A clan elder caught the two of them together and decided the servant had touched what was above him. Tall, bald, and pale in a dark kimono, the man beat the child in front of the household. He called him an atrocious monster and told him to learn his place. He kept swinging long after the boy stopped covering his head, telling him to die like the beast he was. The pages never give that elder a name, and the clan never asks him a single question about it. Years went by and the Kitaryu stayed comfortable inside its own reputation. The Yamatagumi were a Yakuza outfit that the clan counted as a friendly neighbor. One night that neighbor came over the walls with poison gas and firearms. The order carried across the courtyard was to kill all of them and take no prisoners. Yuika's mother died in front of her, and a child's voice cried out for her mommy. Keijio grabbed the girl and dragged her away from the bodies by force. She screamed at him to let go the entire way, and he did not let go. After that night, the girl he served became a completely different person. She spent every waking moment destroying her own body somewhere out of sight. She trained through injuries, wrapped herself in bandages, and started again before the bandages were dry. The revenge she built took years of that, and when it finally came, it took one night. With her sword and his blood, 2,000 Yamatagumi members disappeared without a trace. Afterward, there was nowhere left in the country for either of them to stand. Their faces went up side by side on wanted posters. They lived in rented rooms under red neon light, moving whenever the neighbors started looking twice. Somewhere in those years, the titles between them reversed completely. It was Yuika who began calling Keijio her master, and he never corrected her. She talked about running away to a deserted island where nobody would ever come looking. Keijio answered that all he wanted was to be the shadow that covers her. Among the few things she carried out of the ruined compound was a bottle of perfume. It had been a birthday gift from House Fujiwara and she kept it for 10 years. Back in the burning storeroom, that same bottle comes out of her jacket. It is small and made of glass and the label has gone soft with handling. Yuika tells Keijo that the perfume expired a very long time ago and asks him to spray it anyway. He does it and the scent spreads through a room that is already thick with smoke. Then she pulls him down and kisses him and she holds the kiss on purpose. Keijo has been bleeding from the mouth since the fight started. She swallows it. She tells him she has done far too much wrong in her life to keep going. She says this is what is best and that this way he is the one who gets to live. Keijo realizes what she has taken into her body and begs her to spit it out. He screams her name into her face while the ceiling burns above both of them. Her strength goes out of her arms and Keijo's arms are shaking too hard to hold her. The protagonist kneels and takes her weight and her last words go to him instead. She whispers that she has done too much wrong and that this way Keijo will be able to live. She asks him to please finish it and the sentence never gets its ending. Holding the body, our hero tells her that if that is her wish, he will gladly oblige. He says he will keep his promise to Yuika and finish this for her. He says he will not back down and that he intends to do her proud. Keijo comes off the floor with nothing behind his eyes at all. He roars that he is going to kill the boy first and then kill Peter afterward. He still has no idea that the person he just promised to hunt is holding Yuika's body. The fight restarts in the middle of the fire and it is uglier than the first one. Keijo is bleeding from the mouth, the chest, and both hands at once. Our boy works out that the slightest contact with any of that blood is enough to kill him. So the room itself becomes the problem because every wall Keijo touches turns lethal. The protagonist grabs the fire extinguishers off the wall and detonates them one after another. The freezing spray slams the bleeding shut and fills the corridor with a white curtain. The cold does the thing he actually needed, because a man who is not bleeding is not armed. Keijo swings into a cloud he cannot read and the boy is never where the swing ends. 3 punches land in a row and the 4th one finishes it. Keijo lies on his back among the flames and asks to be killed. Instead of finishing him, our hero tells him what actually happened to his clan. 10 years ago, the current boss of glory was assembling a fresh set of apostles. The prestigious Kitaryu of Japan caught his eye and he made the offer in person. The chief of the clan, an old man who still had his pride, refused him flat, so the boss used the Yamatogumi to completely eradicate the Kitaryu overnight. Then he walked into the ashes and recruited the 2 grieving survivors he had just created. Keijo tells him to stop lying and refuses to hear another word of it. The protagonist asks him evenly why he does not simply go ask Raphael himself. The name lands harder than any punch in the fight. Keijo goes still, because that codename belongs to the boss of glory and almost nobody alive knows it. 10 years back, Raphael sits in a blue suit, leaning into a chair making his offer directly. He puts the seat of an apostle in front of Keijo and waits. Keijo refuses the title for himself and asks for one thing instead. He asks that the name Simon be given to his master, so that he can keep serving her as her shadow. That was how the woman burning in this room became an apostle of glory. The seat was arranged by the man who had her family killed, and Keijo asked for it himself. Whatever was holding him together comes apart on the floor of the storeroom. He remembers Yuika young and smiling in a green kimono with flowers in her hands. When he can speak again, he tells the boy that this fight was never the only one running. He warns him that pirates were sent to the ship where his friends are and that the ship is about to sink for good. Meanwhile, aboard the Ghost Cruise, Biggie and Junior Dako are covering the last of the escaping hostages. Lifeboats are going over the side while gunmen work their way through the decks. The people on the stairs are passengers who bought a ticket to a luxury cruise. Yoon Chang-choi is taken at gunpoint and immediately tries to buy his way out with money. The gunman standing over the chairman answers by promising to take his head instead. Junior looks at the odds, looks at Biggie and arms a bomb against his own chest. He shouts that he will see his brother in heaven and Biggie shouts back that he was the best brother ever. The blast takes the deck and the page cuts away before showing whether Junior walks out of it. Back in the burning room, the protagonist tells Keijo that his friends were never in danger. He explains that there is another apostle standing on that deck. Aboard the ship, a one-armed swordsman walks into the gunmen with his coat open. Apostle Simon takes every weapon in the room apart in a single pass. Years ago, the two of them used to joke about what he would do without a sword arm. Simon used to promise that if he ever lost an arm, he would quit the blade and open a noodle shop. Back then, the two of them already called each other brother and the joke was old between them. Later, Simon broke his own arm on purpose because training with two of them had stopped being hard. 3 onlookers watching that day agreed that he had finally taken it too far. Lying there with the arm ruined, Simon swore that if he ever lost his current techniques, he would perfect an entirely new spiral. On the burning deck he finally lands it, the left-handed spiral slash, and the gunmen go down together. Then he tells his absent brother that he said he would perfect a new technique. Behind the gunmen, the ghost cruise burns down to the waterline and slides under the sea. Every single passenger got off that ship alive. Glory Club has just lost its second base to the water and the wreck takes the auction with it. Shortly after, on the deck of a rescue yacht, Biggie and Junior Dako dropped to their knees. Both brothers walked off the burning deck and the bomb strapped to Junior's chest never took him. In front of them stands Apostle Simon, one arm strapped into a sling. Amused, the swordsman tells the two recruits that the boy had already called them destined to become apostles one day. Neither brother can process being told that by a living apostle. They came aboard that boat as a cleaning crew and they are leaving it as somebody's prophecy. Sometime later, Yoon Chang Choi comes up the deck to check on his bodyguard Sangdo. The chairman also walked off the ship in one piece, with the head the gunman promised to take. Simon thanks him for pulling him out of captivity on remote Uil Island. The panels drop back into that cell for a moment. He hangs shirtless from wrist chains in the dark, beaten open, bleeding, with no idea whether anyone is coming. That is where the best swordsman glory ever raised was kept until the yacht came for him. Now he stands in salt air beside a boy he calls brother. Quietly, our hero thinks to himself that there is still more coming for a man named Raphael. Back in the city, the information broker sits in a room with the swordsman for the first time in years. The years have gotten into Simon and the missing arm is only part of it. Flatly, Ji-won tells him that Raphael wants Peter erased and everything Peter stands for erased along with him. She lists what the last months actually were. The trap at Yeonggwang Hospital was shady from the start and the ghost cruise was worse. A hospital wing full of tanks and a floating auction do not happen without a budget. Neither one was a coincidence and neither one was local business. Both of them were ordered from the same chair. 13 years back, in 2013, the Yeonggwang Cathedral fills for a sermon. Father Gabriel stands at the altar in white vestments, shown only as a silhouette under the high windows. Formally, the priest orders the disbandment of the 12 apostles, effective from that moment forward. He tells them to wipe off the blood, the sweat, and the tears they have shed. Then he releases them into the outside world, free of every order he ever gave them. The men who were built as the country's secret weapons are told to simply go and live. In the pews, the boy Gabriel adopted after the 12 does not accept a word of it. Enraged, he screams that whatever is standing at that altar cannot be his father. He takes a towering statue inside the cathedral and brings it down across the floor. The captions finally attach a name to the man who took the throne. Raphael was Father Gabriel's adopted son, and Raphael is now Glory's current boss. What happened to the old priest after that night is never shown on the page. The story only says that Raphael assumed the throne for himself and moves on. He kept the orphanage's clean reputation and built the rest on top of it. Under his hand, Glory Club became Asia's largest killer organization. He recruited new apostles from all over the world, men and women who never grew up in Yeonggwang. None of them came out of the orphanage that produced the original 12. The seats stayed, the people were replaced, and the titles started getting handed out like job assignments. Now he wants the business worldwide, and one thing is standing in the doorway. To expand, he needs to remove the single apostle, who is the emotional anchor for the entire killer industry, not just for the 12. A silhouette stands inside a ring of missile warheads while the caption names that apostle as Peter. Every piece of the last 3 months belongs to that one line of business. The bounty, the volunteer pipeline, and the schoolgirl sent into a used bookstore were all the same expansion plan. Meanwhile, a gagged man is carried into Ji-won's home under heavy sedation. The name card under the panel reads Kagyo, Occupation Apostle. The shadow of the Kitaru now holds a seat at Raphael's table, and the seat he holds is the one called Simon. They put him on a bed with enough tranquilizer in him to keep a grown man down for a day. The man who carries him in wears a plain hoodie and treats it as a delivery. 2 pages later, the bed is empty, the restraints are off, and nobody in the house heard him go. Elsewhere, hooded figures fill a tiered chamber in rows, faces buried inside white robes. These are the new apostles, assembled and seated below their chairman like a congregation. The rows run up into the dark, and the chamber is built like a lecture hall for people with no faces. At that moment, a blast tears the chamber wall open and a man walks in through the smoke. He is bald, tattooed with dragons, chest covered in old scars, wearing a 4-bladed metal gauntlet. Warmly, Raphael greets him as Simon and says how glad he is that Simon is alive. The seat passed from the spiral swordmaster to Yuika, and from Yuika to the man who asked for it on her behalf. Then the chairman drops the title and calls him by his own name instead. Flatly, Kagyo asks whether it was Raphael who wiped out the Kitaru. He says Yuika's name out loud in a room that treats it as trivia. Raphael never denies the accusation. Instead, he offers his deepest condolences and mentions that he heard what happened to her. Casually, he blames her own temper for where she ended up. He adds that she said she was grateful for Kagyo and lets that sit. Then he complains that all of this feels unfair to him and asks why he should carry responsibility for any of it. Kagyo raises the bladed gauntlet over the seated rows. He gives every apostle in the chamber 10 seconds to walk out the door. Anyone still inside after that is going to die. Nobody moves. The hooded rows treat the ultimatum as an evening's entertainment. One apostle in a mirrored silver mask offers tea to the row behind him. Another, hood completely hollow, refuses the tea and calls the intruder a disgusting baboon. One of them is addressed as John, another as Thaddeus, and Thaddeus gets scolded for stepping on somebody during the brawl. Kagyo tells them he came for information, and that he came for Yuika's sake. The men in the robes tell him to be quiet and mock him as nothing but a straggler. Fighting anyway, he goes at the whole room with the gauntlet and with blood that kills on contact. He warns them that one drop of it is enough, and for a few pages the warning holds. Then a blast of energy floods the entire chamber in white. When it clears, the shadow of the Kiryu is on the floor, bleeding out of everything. He screams that even if he ends up 10 feet under tonight, he is taking all of them with him. Instead, he is forced out of the tower and disappears into the night, leaving a trail. Afterward, one of the robed apostles insists a traitor cannot get off scot-free and demands they hunt him down. Raphael waves it off and says they will meet him again soon enough. Somebody in that conversation is addressed as Philip, and the page never confirms which of the hooded men that is. Alone in his chair above the city lights, the chairman does the arithmetic. Kagyo knew about Nathaniel. Kagyo knew about the ghost cruise. Kagyo knew what really happened to the Kiryu. A grieving swordsman does not collect that kind of file by himself, so Peter is not working alone anymore, and whoever is feeding him has reach, money, and eyes everywhere. One name fits the shape. Yoon Chang-choi, chairman of Diha Group, was rumored to have been aboard the ghost cruise. Against the glowing towers of Diha at night, Raphael decides to kill Yoon Chang-choi. He summons an apostle with long pale pink hair and a lavender hood pulled low over the face. Before handing over the contract, the chairman accuses him of having killed Apostle Gabriel. The page never clarifies whether that Gabriel is the priest from the cathedral or another man who held the seat. The apostle does not argue the accusation. He is told that Diha keeps 372 armed guards on the property. On top of that, the chairman is covered by a Spanish security outfit called Escudo. John takes the job anyway and boasts that he is already prepared for all of it. And now the next story. On an in-universe video platform called NewTubu, a channel reports a warning found painted on the Dia Group tower. The writing is blood red and the word in it is Alipede. To explain the name, the video dramatizes an old job with actors and reenactments. Years ago, a retired killer was hired to guard a client. The footage only calls Your Highness. A printed card lays out his file. Codename John, 59 years old, rank ex-apostle, specialty assassination. His record reads 359 missions at 100% success rate. The industry called him the Apostle of Honor. He arrives in a brown checked overcoat, gloves, a knife, and a set of night vision goggles. He takes position in a warehouse while armed guards form up around the trembling client. The client is small and shaking in the middle of all that hardware, and the reenactment never shows the face. By scent alone, the old man picks the imposter out of the guard detail and pulls the disguise off him. Then the lights go out. In the black, the guards die in a single wet burst across a page with almost nothing on it. The heat-sensing cameras show empty rooms because Alipede does not register on them. The old man fires twice into the dark, trying to catch a face in his own muzzle flash. A single enormous eye opens in the pitch black instead. A blue flash lights the warehouse for one frame. The kill itself is never drawn. The last thing on the recording is Alipede describing what the Apostle of Honor tastes like. The video ends and the frame widens off the laptop. Our boy is watching it in a dark printed hoodie in a bar with two people who call him brother. Ji-won sits on one side in tinted glasses. Apostle Simon sits on the other in an olive jacket, both sleeves down, hair long. They are not reacting to a legend. Brother John was somebody the three of them knew personally. The broker cannot believe the clip everyone is sharing is about the man they knew. Simon wants to go hunting for Alipede tonight and gets told there is no need for that. Quietly, the protagonist explains the part the video buried. Alipede always leaves his mark by his own hand in person before he moves on a chosen target, so the writing on the Diha Tower is not a threat. It is a receipt. The victim has already been picked and the killer has already stood close enough to touch that building. The last page is a bedroom at night and a hooded, faceless figure is standing over a sleeping man. The work never names the man in the bed. Before the tower, there is a handshake. The protagonist sits with the restrained Apostle Simon and tells him plainly that he does not have much time left. He asks Simon to find the rest of the old apostles before Raphael and his men reach them. Quietly, he adds that he does not want his fellow apostles to get hurt. Simon takes the offered hand and pledges that he, Apostle Simon, will always stand by his side. Then he leaves for Seoul Station, promising to bring their brothers and sisters back safe and sound. Nobody in the room asks what the protagonist meant about running out of time. Shortly after, under the name Sunggu Kim, our boy walks Jiwon into the Deha Group building. He introduces her to the chairman as his teacher, his legal guardian, and a master hacker on top of that. A young man in a blue printed hoodie sits at the same table and keeps his mouth shut. Yoonchang Choi explains why he handed a job this size to a high schooler. He says he watched how the boy dealt with Sangdo Park back at the amusement park. More than that, he says the boy is the complete opposite of everything Glory is and stands for. Then the chairman lays out the thing he has been sitting on for years. Raphael, the current chairman of Glory Club, has never liked how close Deha Group sits to Father Gabriel. Choi says he always knew Raphael would eventually move to get rid of him and take Deha Group for himself. So Choi decided to move first and take over Deha Group before that could happen. Behind his voice, the panel shows a massive tattooed back standing in shadow and firelight. What he did not expect, the chairman admits, is that Raphael would employ Alipede. The sentence empties him out and an aide with an eye patch has to help him from the room. The page never says what is wrong with the old man. The briefing that follows is short and all of it is bad. Alipede is the top assassin across the globe and has never failed a mission. He is the man who assassinated one of Father Gabriel's own, Apostle John. That is the second time the boy has heard it, and this time it comes from a client. Meanwhile, the building gets a new set of guards. A banner card introduces Escudo as Europe's #1 security team, also known as the Shield of Europe. Their A-team leader is Costa, and his code name card lists his specialty as Kisi fighting method. Their B-team leader is Marco, printed on his own card as Marco the Passionate. Costa takes one look at the new consultant and calls him this little kid. Then he throws a sudden whip-like strike at him as an introductory gift. Sunggu snatches it out of the air barehanded and does not shift his feet. The Shield of Europe stops laughing. Escudo walks him through the numbers. Over 100 guards cover the building and the camera coverage has absolutely no blind spots. Our boy accepts every word of that and draws the conclusion nobody wants. Since Alipede left no trace of breaking in, he never had to break in at all. Alipede is already inside the building, most likely dressed as one of them. Down in the monitor room, the work is dull and the mood is not. Jiwon sits at the wall of screens with her service dog beside her chair. Marco leans over her desk and tests her patience while Sanchez waits behind him. Marco asks Sanchez if it is already time and the two of them walk off. A blonde Deha technician says out loud what everyone is thinking, that they are all walking corpses. Nobody argues with him. Suddenly, an explosion and gunfire tear through the 36th floor. Both teams sprint into a hallway that has already gone dark. What they find is not a fight. It is a body on the floor and the body does not have a head. A dangling ID badge settles the question and the badge says Marco. The men who took orders from him an hour ago back away from what is left. At that moment, every phone in the building buzzes at once. It is security footage and it shows Marco running down a black corridor. Something the camera never resolves takes him from behind and drags him into the dark. The timestamp does the real damage because the man on that tape died before today. The Marco who leaned over Jiwon's desk was somebody wearing him. The video ends on a distorted face with words scrawled across it in blood-red script. Nobody will get out of here alive. Let's see who wins, old man. The page never says which old man he means. Back in the corridor, the trust in that building is already gone. A security man slams the young bodyguard against the wall by the throat. Furious, he demands to know if the kid really thinks one of them is a Alipede. Calmly, our boy answers that there is a high chance the person who raises the question is the traitor. He puts a number on it, 78%, and tells the man he is the most suspicious one in the room. Elsewhere, a woman in a purple suit asks how anyone can be sure a Alipede is among them. The man beside her tells her there is no need to worry because it will all be finished soon. In the security room, the crew finishes reviewing 72 hours of footage across 36 floors. The result is clean and horrible. Not a single person entered the premises in that entire window. A technician mutters that it has to be an inside man and floats the name Sanchez. Another one says Paulo has always been taking breaks. Nobody in that room is watching the person who actually cracks it. G1 has the camera audio and the camera audio is what breaks the case. She strips the mute off the viral clip of the attack on Sir Marco and hears the room wrong. The sound does not match the building today, which means the footage was staged and recorded in advance. She says it flat, that the video was not filmed today. Then Ji-won gets up and goes after him in person. Overcome, she taunts him, saying he has some guts to toy with her like that. The boy overhears enough to know she is walking into it alone. He turns to leave and 3 security men put themselves in the doorway. One of them tells him that if he keeps this up they will have no choice but to break his legs. He answers with 2 words, "Try me," and adds, "if they dare." In a dark warehouse, Ji-won corners the man she came for. She tells him she rigged the audio on the cameras herself. She tells him his own taunt, the promise that nobody gets out alive, walked her straight to him. Then she names him as Alipede and names him again by scent Sir Marco. The man does not deny either one. He reaches up and peels the face off his head because the mask is skin taken from a man he killed. Underneath is white hair, red eyes, and a dark green suit that has not been touched. The codename card comes up beside him. John, 28 years old, specialty assassination, record 187 missions, success rate 100%. The notes line is a single question mark. The next page is a splash that reads Apostle. The Apostle John who died on that video was 59 years old and retired. The man who killed him is carrying the name now. Ji-won takes off her sunglasses and tells him it is not like she can see anyway. She says she assumed he was simply too ugly to look at. Then she cuts the power to the entire building. In total darkness, she works with a blade hidden in her cane and 25 years of self-taught echolocation. She explains that through sound waves she can locate everything around her. A glowing blue grid snaps into place around her and the Apostle becomes prey inside it. She drives him across the warehouse in a run of hits that shake the walls. John lets her finish. Then he tells her that he was born blind too. He carries a super high-frequency device that reads the room above the range her method covers. He catches her blade barehanded and a red sonar field opens around his body. He names the thing she is feeling now and the word he uses is despair. He confirms that she was never a coincidence that he chose her specifically. Then he puts her down with one blow, remarking that having another blind person around would only get in his way. He also asks the empty room whether this is the caliber of Gabriel's killers. Back in the corridor, 4 operatives are still standing between our boy and the door. One of them repeats the threat about breaking his legs. He tells them to try and the man in front rushes him with a hook punch. The punch goes through empty air because the boy is already past it. When the panel settles, his hand is resting exactly on the man's jugular. He never closes it. The 4 of them stand there understanding that they were allowed to live. In the warehouse, the white-haired man is talking to Ji-won while she bleeds. He tells her that as the other blind person, she was the very first target he decided to go for here. She tries to keep him talking and he strikes her down mid-sentence. On the floor, she works out how he is doing it. He is reading the room with a frequency above 20,000 Hz, which no ordinary human ear can register. A seasoned veteran cannot register it either, and she is the veteran. The story goes back to a gym and a much younger Ji-won. Her trainer, Coach Keith, walks her through acrobatics and teaches her to read space through sound. He also gives her the warning she never got over. He tells her there is a certain type of person she will never surpass, the ones born with sight. The panel cuts from that to a newborn crying alone inside an incubator with its eyes bandaged. That baby is the man standing over her now, a person that was born blind. He rebuilt his other senses through neuroplasticity until they served as his eyes. Ji-won plays her last card. She raises a metal pipe over her head and screams, aiming a sonic attack at ears far more sensitive than hers. The white-haired man doubles over and then he grins and asks if that was the reaction she was expecting. The pain was theater. He disarms her and drives the blade in and he explains himself while he does it. He tells her he was born with an innate advantage over her. He tells her that is not a gap she can close through sheer effort. He tells her she may be one of Gabriel's killers, but she is not at the level of an apostle. The finishing strike never lands. A punch arrives out of frame and detonates across the panel and the assassin leaves the ground. He comes back with a knife and the newcomer catches it barehanded in a dark suit. Then the boy says the name out loud, Alipede, and the room changes owner. Outside, the search teams flood the district for a man whose face is finally known. A voice checks in over the phone as 8-team leader Costa. Suited operatives sweep the streets and every one of them comes back with nothing because the trail is gone. Alipede is thinking about the voice that named him. He wonders if that was Peter, then corrects himself because that was the voice of a young man. He mutters that this kid dares to come after him. Sometime later, Ji-won is in a bed with enrollment 4 line and bandages over multiple stab wounds. She complains about all of it theatrically and at length. She calls her rescuer kid, which is what she always calls him. Then she gives him the real warning that the man is a Alipede and that he may be blind but he packs a punch. Our boy is doing arithmetic while she talks. His conclusion is that the disguise was the whole weapon and the disguise is burned. With his identity blown, Alipede will move to get rid of Yoon Chang-choi as fast as possible. The security around the chairman answers that by tightening to a level nobody can walk through. A muscular officer with an eye patch says he's going to go check on Mr. Choi and starts moving. A woman in a red dress crosses the floor with a bald bodyguard at her shoulder. A figure walks past two guards on that same floor and neither guard looks twice. The protagonist runs the problem the only way he knows, which is from inside the killer's head. If he had to perform an assassination under these conditions, there would be exactly one way to go about it. He would put on the uniform of the people paid to stop him. So he does the same thing. The last panel is an extreme close-up of dark sunglasses and curled hair, and the line under it says he's going to disguise himself once again. The security around the chairman tightens by the hour, and the tower becomes almost impossible to work around. The man who needs to get inside arrives at exactly the same conclusion the boy did. There is only one way left to do this, and that way is another borrowed face. Shortly after, an elevator on an executive floor opens on a bald man in aviator sunglasses. He wears a small hoop earring, a tailored dark suit, and the bored comm of a supervisor. He introduces himself on the floor as Costa, the A-team leader of Escudo. 3 escorts walk at his shoulder and the pages never give any of them a name. One is a blonde woman in a red dress, one wears a long red braid, one is a heavy dark-haired man. At the chairman's office, a guard in sunglasses puts out a hand and blocks the door. Flatly, the guard tells the group that Sangdo ordered everyone to be careful of Escudo's team leaders. Costa does not argue with a man who is only following an instruction he cannot overrule. The secretary steps out of the office instead, composed, long dark hair with a blue-black tint, red blouse. Costa hands her a briefcase and calls it a document meant for the chairman personally. Coldly, he warns her not to dare open that briefcase before Mr. Choi receives it. She takes it without a single question, and a sealed case walks past the guards in her hand. Meanwhile, Ji-won's search team sweeps the lower floors arguing about who the accomplice could be. A dark-haired guard insists there's no doubt the accomplice is somewhere inside this building. A bearded blonde guard answers that not one other corpse has been reported anywhere in the tower. Their whole method assumes a body turns up wherever a stolen face begins. Elsewhere, an observer studies a report on a suspect, while a red analytical aura wraps the silhouette. One voice reads out that the man is only a rank D killer from Glory. Another says his rank has to be at least B and maybe rank A or higher. The name they land on at the bottom of that page is Peter. At that moment, our boy steps into a service elevator and finds Costa already standing inside it. Casually, the protagonist brings up Alipede while the floor numbers climb, and the bald man flinches. He presses further, asking why a killer of that caliber only ever insists on fighting in the shadows. He asks whether the answer is simply that the man cannot see. The test comes before the accusation because our hero swapped Costa's favorite pen for a decoy earlier. Costa takes the wrong pen, clicks it, and never notices that the object in his hand changed. Then the boy names the second thing he has been counting for a day. Up until yesterday, he had never once seen Costa touch the braille dots printed on a soda can. A sighted man ignores braille. A blind man ignores it only when he is pretending very hard. Suddenly, Costa orders the lights shut off and the elevator car drops into total darkness. He taunts the boy to keep struggling, saying the more he struggles, the more painful the death becomes. In the black, a clawed silhouette lands blow after blow that our hero cannot read or answer. Blood spreads across the elevator floor while a floor indicator ticks somewhere above the fight. Then the protagonist drags 2 blades against the car's interior wall and strikes sparks. Each spark buys him mere milliseconds of light, and milliseconds are all his experience needs. He reads the incoming angles between flashes and starts answering every attack with a cleaner one. Sometime later, our boy walks out wiping blood off his hands and tells his allies the truth. He had a face-to-face talk with Alipede in that elevator and the disguise is finished. He orders them to go and find Costa's body somewhere in the building. One ally repeats the name in disbelief, unable to accept that Costa was the victim this time. Elsewhere, in a scene the chapter never labels, a pale figure sits alone and thinks. He counts that he stabbed the man a total of 52 times, aiming only at vital points. He admits it still does not make sense that this was not enough. He also admits that this is the first time he has wanted to kill someone of his own volition. In the same dim room, an unseen voice announces that plans have changed and it is time for the real fun. The work never shows that speaker's face and never confirms which man is doing the thinking. Back in the halls, our hero runs with a phone at his ear and tells Ji-won to listen carefully. Alipede was never the one who was going to kill Mr. Choi, and the real killer is someone else. The decoy was the loudest man in the building, and the loudest man is never the knife. He works it from access instead of from skill because the tower is full of people who cannot reach the chairman. Only one person walks into that office at any hour without a single guard questioning it. He names Mr. Choi's secretary and says he will be face-to-face with her soon enough. The last page of the chapter shows her with a slim blade already in her hand. In another insert, the work refuses to explain. A woman with long, wavy brown hair is pinned down in a blue dress. She asks who it is and whether they are sure they have the right person. Her name is never printed beside that panel. The cold open of the next chapter confirms what the deduction only guessed. Apostle John's spy inside the Dia group is Mr. Choi's own secretary, and she has fed him information since the beginning. At that moment, two women in magenta blouses stop her in a corridor and take the briefcase from her hands. Their name card reads Grand and Ariana, personal bodyguards of Yuika Choi, with 271 special missions completed. Grand has dark skin and black hair worked into cornrows, and Ariana is fair with wavy blonde hair. Inside the case they find syringes and a strange device seated in a circular slot. Sourly the secretary insists those are important documents for the chairman. Neither bodyguard believes a word of it and the corridor stops being a workplace. Cornered, she attacks the pair and loses badly, and the fight ends with her pinned and talking. She begins to give up John's whereabouts and gets 3 words out before the sentence dies. Out of nowhere, Apostle John himself steps in and opens her throat mid-syllable. Whatever she was about to reveal is gone from the story permanently because nobody else knows it. The 2 bodyguards ask the white-haired man directly whether he is John. They add that their information said he is blind, which is the wrong thing to bring up. Calmly, he tells them to look at him as much as they like because they will not be getting past him. He attacks and both women are left beaten and bloodied on the floor. The chapter never says whether either of them survives that room. Elsewhere, our hero and Ji-won move toward the same floor at speed. He explains that Alipede has invited him to a meeting, and that accepting an invitation is only polite. Sharply, Ji-won tells him it is obviously a trap and that walking in is suicide. He cuts her off and asks her to say his name out loud. She answers with the name almost nobody alive says, and she stumbles on the first letter of Peter. They find Grand and Ariana on the floor a minute later, wrecked and bleeding. A dying Ariana presses something into his hand and warns him that the man is looking for him. A note left at the scene threatens the chairman's life directly. Yuika Choi has been drugged and fitted with a remote bomb around his neck. Our boy sends Ji-won to check on the chairman and goes down alone toward the armory on floor B10. The story cuts to the year 2017 to a town somewhere in Malta. A hooded young man keeps rabbits there, feeding them by hand in a quiet yard. 2 visitors arrive to test him, and one of them is Octoman, bald and in an expensive suit. The hooded man names the weapon pointed at him by model from Sound Alone, a 1998 Glock 17 competition pistol. Then he crosses the distance and disarms Octoman barehanded in 4 strikes. A white-haired recruiter with red eyes applauds and calls him Alipede, praising the display as amazing. He offers him a place in Glory, the organization that used to be called Yeonggwang. He tells the young man that in Korea he will meet Peter. The flashback never prints the recruiter's name, so the resemblance to Apostle John is only a resemblance. Back in the present, the elevator opens on B10 and there is no armory behind the doors. It is a full warehouse floor and Alipede is standing in the middle of it waiting. Evenly, he tells the boy that something about him has felt strange since the day they met. He is clearly young and he fights like someone who could not possibly be young. He finishes the thought out loud and says the boy must be Peter. Apostle John steps out beside him holding a switch wired by his comrade Matthias. He explains that the device obliterates anything within a 60-foot radius of where it sits. Our hero points out that pressing it means killing Yuika Choi along with everything else. Smiling, John answers that this is exactly what he wanted, and presses the switch anyway. Far above them, a gagged figure in an executive vest thrashes as a beeping starts near his throat. The work never prints that man's name on the page. Ji-won is close enough to see it and gets 2 words out. The beeping accelerates, and then the entire Dia group tower goes up across the night skyline. John's only comment is that a party is nothing without some music. The next chapter opens inside that explosion from the outside, seen through the eye of a figure with red-pink eyes. He announces that the party has officially begun as the skyscraper tears itself open. Shortly after, in a warehouse, a white-haired man stands over a trembling man in a black suit. Contemptuously, he tells the man that he is not Peter because the real Peter would still be calm. He boasts that he has blown off Yuika Choi's head. He adds that the Ji-won woman's corpse has probably been scorched past recognition. Both deaths are claims made by an enemy, and the chapter never shows either body. He promises to teach every arrogant, prideful one of them what real despair feels like. The story then drops backward into the showdown between Alipede and Apostle John. During that fight, Alipede carried a device that made his body heat completely undetectable. It forced the blind apostle to hunt him through absolute darkness using echolocation alone. Alipede admits he has no idea which direction the incoming strikes are flying from. John gloats that he sees all of it, and lands hit after hit in the black. Then Alipede lights a road flare and holds it up like a man out of ideas. John dismisses the light as a useless bluff against a man who has never used his eyes. The flare was never about light. Its heat trips the warehouse fire sprinklers and the whole ceiling opens into artificial rain. The noise of falling water shreds the echolocation, and Alipede tells him his vision is now as impaired as everyone else's. Shaken, John realizes his sense has never once been interrupted in his life. He also realizes his opponent had been mapping sprinkler heads for the entire fight. Then he recovers and calls it a cheap scare tactic because sprinklers cannot spray water forever. Alipede keeps talking instead of pressing the advantage, and he calls the apostle a beetle. He says the hard shell exists to hide how deep the insecurities underneath it go. That word opens a flashback to a child born blind with red eyes and white hair. Other children mock him, beat him, and tell him he was born weaker than they were. They kill his pet white rabbit while he holds it. Then a blackout takes the building, and every one of those children is suddenly helpless in the dark. The blind boy is not affected by it in any way because he can see all of it regardless. He hunts them down one at a time through the hallway. A flashlight beam later finds him standing in a corridor of bodies with blood across his face. He reports it to an unseen figure he calls Mr., saying he is finally better than them. The work shows only a hand holding that flashlight and never gives the figure a name. Back in the warehouse, Alipede keeps working the wounded pride instead of the body. He provokes until the apostle finally abandons distance and closes in to grab him. That grab was the whole point of the taunting. Handcuffs snap shut around John's wrists before he understands what he has walked into. Quietly, Alipede tells him he has him right in the palm of his hand and that he can finally see him. Then he says a single number out loud, 34. That is how many fatal vital points he has mapped across the blind apostle's body. He warns him to get ready because they are about to find out how many of them he can endure. The last panel holds on Alipede's face, tearful with energy crackling around it. Nothing in this chapter shows how a man in handcuffs became the man boasting over a burning skyline. Rain hammers the rooftop, and the white-haired killer has our hero pinned flat beneath him. Alipede says the number out loud again, 34. He tells Peter that every one of those fatal points is already mapped across his body. Coldly he adds that they are about to find out how many of them a legend can absorb. Water pours off his white hair and lands on the face under him. The protagonist says nothing at all, and the first strike lands anyway. Alipede works from a list instead of from anger. Each hit goes exactly where he promised it would go. He takes the ribs, then the throat, then the joints that keep a body upright. The rain washes the blood away almost as fast as it comes out. Between strikes he keeps talking, and the talking stays calmer than the beating. He tells Peter that most men in this industry drop somewhere around the 4th point. Genuinely puzzled, he wonders out loud what is holding this particular one up. Then he decides that it was never willpower keeping this one on his feet. He names it dignity instead, and he says the word like a diagnosis. Dignity, he explains, is a far heavier thing to carry than a body. Under him, our hero keeps his breathing even while the count keeps climbing. He does not beg, he does not answer, and he does not try to talk his way out of the number. That silence bothers the killer more than any of the wounds he has opened. After that he stops talking because the talking was never the part he enjoyed. Alipede grabs our hero by the front of his soaked shirt and hauls him off the concrete. He carries him toward the edge of the roof without hurrying at all. The city sits far below, smeared and yellow behind the falling water. Then he opens his hand and drops him over the side. Peter falls through the storm with nothing under him but rain. He crashes into a lower roof hard enough to split the surface beneath him. The impact is loud enough to swallow the storm for one full second. For a moment the only thing moving up there is the water pooling around the crater. Rain fills the broken concrete and runs pink toward the drain at the edge. Then the shape inside the crater moves, and the fight starts over on the new roof. Somewhere in that restart, our boy ends up with a blade in his hand. The pages never bother explaining where the weapon came from. What they show instead is the exact instant the duel changes owners. Alipede swings at a target he had been reading perfectly for the entire beating. This time the target is not where his senses say it is. The blades meet once and the sound of it cuts straight through the rain. They meet again and again until the exchange stops being a series of strikes. It becomes a single continuous blur of steel between two soaked silhouettes. The blind killer keeps swinging into empty space where a man was standing half a second earlier. He turns, corrects, and swings again, and the correction is already wrong when it arrives. Water sprays off both blades every time they cross, which happens faster than the rain can refill the gap. On the rooftop, the two of them look less like duelists and more like one weather system. Only one of them is still gaining ground inside it. Every technique that carried him through the warehouse stops paying out. He built his entire career on tracking prey by sound in total darkness. Now the man he is tracking has a piece of metal in his fist. The metal moves faster than the reading does, and the reading arrives too late every time. Alipede's guard opens and something opens him with it. He staggers back across the flooded roof with rain running into a fresh cut. He resets his stance and listens harder, and the listening gives him nothing usable. The man he came to dismantle is somewhere in the storm, moving and completely absent from his senses. Then he screams that he refuses to accept this. He demands to know why he cannot land a single strike anymore. The greatest assassin in the world stands in the downpour and admits he cannot see his opponent at all, not the way a blind man means it either, because he has never once needed eyes. Shortly after, the duel spills off the roof and into a corridor lit by red emergency strobes. The light stutters on and off across the walls, which changes nothing for a man who works by sound. Alipede swings through the red flashes and hits nothing but air and drywall. Inside his own head, the rage keeps circling the same sentence. He reminds himself that he is the great Alipede, the one who never failed a contract. He asks himself how a killer of his caliber can barely perceive the thing hunting him. There is no answer in the corridor, only the strobe and the sound of an approaching blade. He tries to widen his read, listening for feet, for breath, for the drag of wet cloth. The information comes back the way it has been coming back since the rooftop, incomplete. He is not losing the duel because he is outmatched in strength. He is losing it because the man in front of him stopped being unarmed. Then the corridor ends the argument for him. Our hero closes the distance and puts him on the floor in one motion. Peter pins him there with the calm of somebody handling a piece of equipment. Flatly, he warns Alipede that the more he moves, the worse the pain is going to get. Then he tells him that his pectoralis minor should be ruptured by now. He says it without checking the injury and without any interest in being right. Alipede lies under him and marvels at the precision of the diagnosis. He tests the warning by moving, and the pain confirms every word of it. He never felt anything reach into his chest with that kind of accuracy. A man who navigates the world by sound has just been read more thoroughly than he has ever read anyone. The great Alipede, mapper of 34 fatal points, is now the one being mapped. He came into this fight with a number and a promise attached to it. He is leaving it as the demonstration instead of the demonstrator. Meanwhile, several miles away, a hooded figure walks toward the front of the Diha Group Tower. The building is still burning from the bomb, and the street outside is full of vehicles and floodlights. A SWAT cordon holds the entrance, armored and armed and stacked across the doors. Rifles come up as soon as the hood clears the floodlights. The man in the hood does not slow down as he reaches the line. He identifies himself as the chairman of Glory and expects the doors to open. One of the officers tells him that nobody is getting through, no exceptions. He adds that not even the president of the country is allowed inside that building tonight. The hooded man takes that in, and the answer he gives is not verbal. He walks into the cordon and takes it apart. Body armor does nothing, and the rifles never get to matter. The officers who were holding the doors are on the ground before the ones behind them understand what arrived. He steps over what is left and keeps moving toward the entrance. Nobody radios a warning because the people who would have radioed it are already down. Cordon that was supposed to hold a burning crime scene lasts about as long as a sentence. The seat he is claiming has a name attached to it that the industry already fears: Raphael. He came to the burning tower personally, which is not how the boss of Glory has operated so far. Every contract before this one went to an apostle, and every apostle answered to him from a distance. Tonight the distance is gone, and the chairman of Glory is walking in through the front door himself. Back in the corridor, the duel is finished and the winner is still catching his breath. He beat the assassin that Glory built specifically to erase him. He did it in the rain, off a roof, with a blade he picked up along the way. Nothing about that victory reaches the man now climbing through the wreckage of the Diha Tower. The pages do not show the two of them meeting, and they do not show what Raphael wants inside. What they show is a boss who stopped sending people, and a building with our hero still in it. Inside the tower, the man in the hood steps down on a fallen guard and the floor answers with a crack. Calmly, he tells the broken man that he must be even more powerful than the president himself. Then the hood comes off and the pages finally print the name Raphael. He is bald, dark-skinned, and wearing a sage green three-piece suit with a loosened tie. In close-up, his eyes glow orange with a vertical slit through the middle. He starts walking deeper into the building for one stated reason. Chairman Choi is somewhere inside, which means Peter might be inside too. Upstairs, a guard reports to Yoonchang Choi that the intruder identified himself as the chairman of Glory. Shaken, Choi repeats the name Raphael out loud and asks whether the man is really in the building. The answer walks through the hallway a moment later. Raphael strolls unarmed past dozens of men aiming rifles at his back. Not one of them fires, and he goes straight into the penthouse office. That single panel closes an open question from the explosion. The white-haired assassin bragged that he had blown Yoonchang Choi's head off. The chairman is sitting right here, alive, with a medical team standing around him. Raphael does not raise his voice once. Politely, he asks Choi who assisted him in surviving the attack on his own tower. Choi says nothing useful. The boss suggests a name himself, asking whether it might have been Apostle Peter. Terrified of the glowing eyes across the desk, the chairman deflects with a compliment about how talented Glory's killers are. Raphael accepts the non-answer and turns to leave. At the door, he delivers the actual message. If Choi is secretly in contact with Peter, he will be ripped to shreds. The moment the elevator takes the boss away, the chairman comes apart. Loudly, Choi accuses his own staff of being Raphael's spies planted around him for years. He demands sedatives, then demands the doctors leave, then demands both at once. Standing at the edge of the room is Ji-won, alive as well, which buries the second boast the white-haired man made in that warehouse. She watches the chairman's hands and notices something odd about the man she is guarding. Tucked against him, kept out of sight, is an old fur hat worn down by decades. The room empties out. Doctors, assistants, and security file into the corridor until only one boy remains. Peter walks in as Sangdo and confirms out loud that no spies are left in the room. Choi collapses into sobbing, saying Diha is already in the hands of glory. He tells the boy that Raphael has been circling the company since the very first day. He calls himself a dead man walking, and he means it as a fact rather than a complaint. The protagonist answers by shouting the chairman's real name across the room. Then he asks whether the man has forgotten the promise he made him that day. That one word opens Moscow, 1978. Young Peter moves through a train car full of Soviet guards holding a small boy hostage. He does not describe what he is about to do to the child in the corner. Instead, he crouches, tells little Yunchang to cover his ears, and tells him to count slowly to 10. The boy covers his ears. The counting runs out, and by the time the small hands come down, the car is quiet and the guards are on the floor. Nobody in that carriage aims a gun at anyone ever again. Outside in the snow, the rescue turns into something else entirely. The boy has no hat, and the cold is the kind that decides things. Peter takes his own fur hat off and puts it on the child's head. Gently, he tells Yunchang to think of that hat as him standing beside him. Then he warns the boy that hard years are coming and that nobody will carry him through them. He asks for one thing in exchange for the rescue. If the two of them ever meet again, the boy has to be a good man, living a life Peter can be proud of. The boy holds the hat with both hands and says nothing back for a long moment. The snow keeps falling on two people who will not see each other for decades. Years later, in a different room, an adult Yunchang Choi stands in front of an adult Peter in a black suit. He cries and thanks him for finally keeping the promise by coming back at all. It is the same debt from two directions. The child got a hat and a warning, and the man built an empire trying to be worth them. Back in the penthouse, the chairman calms down. Quietly, Choi apologizes to the staff he accused, telling them the fear got away from him. Then he settles his account with the woman who stayed. He hands Ji-won a thank you letter, and inside the envelope is a black credit card. She lights up completely, and her little dog gets swept up in the celebration with her. Meanwhile, Sangdo goes back to Shin Yeonggwang High School and walks into a classroom that is already panicking. Yuna Lee bursts in with news straight from Glory headquarters. The organization is cutting every D-rank killer outside the top 100, and the list is not negotiable. Someone reads Yuna's number out loud, and it is 335 out of the whole ladder. Biggie and Junior start doing the math on themselves and get nowhere good. Our hero already knows his own number because his card prints it. He is 336th, the last name on the last rung of Glory. At that moment, the classroom door slides open on a stranger who fills the frame. He is huge, scarred across the face, blonde, with an earring and tattoos under an open jacket. He looks around at the terrified students and asks whether these are the little D-ranks. The man walks straight past them to Sangdo and accuses him of running away like a coward and coming right back. Politely, the protagonist asks Ji-won for the room, saying the two of them need to talk alone. Alone, the stranger drops the aggression and asks a real question. He admits that outside of Glory's apostles, he has never met anyone as powerful as this boy. He wants to know who he actually is. Peter tells him the truth in one flat sentence, and the man rejects it on principle because Peter is supposed to be an old man. He recalls going after Raphael himself, and he recalls losing badly. Then he goes down on both knees on the floor. Grieving, he begs the boy to make him stronger because he wants revenge for Yuika. The pages never print this man's name. Peter says no. He refuses the kneeling, and he refuses the word master that comes with it. Instead, he hands the man a job. There are 3 D-rank kids in the next room with numbers in the 300s and a purge closing in. Yuna, Biggie, and Junior need to be trained to survive, and the scarred man is going to do the training. He does not get a title out of it, and he does not get a rematch with Raphael either. He gets 3 teenagers and a deadline, which is the only offer on the table. Elsewhere at Glory headquarters, the leadership is reading the same ladder from the other side. Traces of Peter keep turning up at incident after incident, always after the fact. A gray-haired strategist in a dark green cloak floats the theory that gets everyone's attention. Peter could be hiding among the other killers, wearing a low rank like a coat. The boss man grins in the purple light and likes the idea immediately. Someone praises Apostle John's skill at disguise as the tool for flushing him out. Hanging upside down off the side of a building, another figure calls in with an idea he describes as super-duper fun. In a private hideout, Peter's own people try to talk him out of it. A robed ally who calls him master lays out what the announcement actually says. Glory intends to keep exactly 100 D ranks and demote everyone else below them. A woman with glasses and a sword at her hip says the obvious part out loud. It is clearly a trap built shape by shape around one man. The protagonist agrees with the reading and goes anyway, because he wants to find out for himself. 1 week later, hundreds of D-rank killers stand on the shore of Glory's new base. The organization calls it Dead Island. The host is a man named Corey, in a bow tie and round glasses, holding a microphone in front of an old drive-in theater sign. Cheerfully, Corey explains the rule that turns the ranking into a hunt. Everyone survives 48 hours on the island, and during those hours they may fight, hide, or steal each other's volunteer cards freely. Only the top 100 by card count walk off with a rank. Our boy listens with his card in his pocket reading Sunggu Kim, rank D, 336th ex-apostle. He decides to bury his real strength completely and behave like an ordinary last-place nobody. The crowd is a strange collection of ordinary lives. A police investigator named Gwangsu Kim stands at 116th. Bingsu Park, the owner of the Freezy Ice Factory, sits at 113th. A restaurant waiter in an orange pumpkin balaclava calls himself Pumpkin Knight at 331st. An amusement park clown in a green wig goes by Joker at 312th. A fashion model named Jolie holds 222nd. These are shopkeepers, waiters, and party entertainers with numbers stamped on plastic cards. Most of them have never fought anything worse than a bad shift, and Glory has just put them on an island together. Then a showman starts working the crowd. He has maroon hair, thin glasses, dangling earrings, and a grin far too wide for the situation. He goes down the line pinching people's cheeks and shouting for Peter to raise his hand. His first catch is a bald, 65-year-old restaurant owner ranked 273rd whose card reads Heaven. The old man is obviously not Peter, and the showman keeps going anyway. His own card is the reason this matters. It reads Tiger Swallowtail, ranked D, 330th, and one line of description underneath. Current Apostle Thaddeus. The clown pinching cheeks in the crowd is a sitting apostle wearing a bottom rung like a costume sent here to find one man. It is the cleanest proof yet of the rule this world runs on. Apostle is a chair, not a name, and whoever is in the chair right now owns the title. The shouting comes around again. Somewhere in that crowd of D-ranks, our hero raises his hand and holds it up. Calmly, he tells Tiger Swallowtail that he seems to have his attention now. Thaddeus stops moving. The whole island noise drops out of the panel, and the only thing left on the page is a single stunned word from a man who did not expect to actually find anything. The enforcer in black does not buy it for a second. He grabs the red-haired recruit with the round glasses by the hair and yanks him sideways. Around them, the other recruits mutter that Xingdi is only Chinese slang for bro. Tiger Swallowtail shrugs the hand off and turns the whole thing back into a game. Brightly, he suggests that the kid with 336 printed on his vest fight a real tough guy instead. He opens with a middle kick, follows with a Brazilian kick, then drives a side kick into the ribs. Our hero absorbs each one and folds it away, giving back nothing that resembles technique. He rocks back a half step exactly the way a bottom-ranked nobody would rock back. Privately, Tiger Swallowtail notes that the reaction was far too clean to be an accident. He wonders to himself whether this quiet 336 is somehow associated with Raphael. The surrounding D-ranks push in and tell him to leave their little Sunggu alone. Not one of them has any idea what they are standing in front of. At that moment, the drive-in billboard over the field flickers on with Corey's jester grin. Gleefully, the host announces that the game is about to begin and wishes them survival until the bitter end. Hundreds of recruits scatter across the island at once, and the culling starts without a whistle. Our boy immediately does the arithmetic on the parts nobody else is counting. The mart and the bunker are the contested prizes, which means both are thick with glory cameras. Fighting there at his real level would put his face on a feed that reaches Raphael. He peels a small group of low-numbered D-ranks away from the hotspots entirely. He leads them into an abandoned factory on the quiet edge of the map. There he lays out a plan built for weaklings rather than for monsters. Every bottom-ranked killer joins one alliance and none of them contests the open ground. The stronger players grind each other down over the mart and the bunker for hours. Then the alliance falls on the exhausted survivors 10 against 1 and takes their volunteer cards. Card count is the only scoreboard, and the top 100 card counts survive the purge. The room likes it because for once the math favors the people at the bottom. Sometime later, our hero slips out alone into the forest where the camera coverage thins. There he sheds the problem that his own body has become on this island. He has borrowed the identity of another D-rank, the masked fighter called Pumpkin Knight. The pages never show how that borrowing happened, and the real Pumpkin Knight is simply gone from the story. What returns to the factory is an orange balaclava with 331 printed across the chest. The mask covers everything, which means the strength underneath belongs to nobody the cameras can name. His teammates only register something vague and harmless about the change. One of them mentions that Mr. seems a little taller today and a little more built. Nobody follows the thought any further than that. Back at the factory, a recruit numbered 317 staggers through the door, bleeding from the face and torso. Desperately, he warns the Alliance that a B-rank killer is loose among the contestants. The room has barely absorbed that when two of their own allies stop pretending. Waiju Zhu drives a knife into the recruit numbered 325 and tells him flatly that he is too late. His name card prints him as a member of the Black Snake Clan, rank B, 27th, specialty unlisted. Beside him, Yeondu turns on another recruit with a card that reads rank B, 39th, close combat. Both of them wear single digits on their chests, a 2 and a 3. Somewhere in the system there is presumably a 1 that the pages never show. Laughing, Zhu explains that betrayal from the inside was always the cheapest way to farm cards. The alliance built to protect the weak was seeded with B ranks before anyone arrived. Panic tears through the factory and the cards start changing hands by force. Yuna does not run with the rest. She plants herself in front of the pile of volunteer cards with Biggie and Junior Dokko. Her knife comes out faster than anything the watching recruits expected from a 335. One of them blurts that she is impossibly fast, and the compliment lands on the wrong pronoun. Yuna keeps one eye on the masked figure in the doorway and worries for him instead. Internally, she reminds herself that Sangdo cannot fully use his strength in this place. Around her the slaughter continues, and she says goodbye to Biggie as if heaven were the next room. Then the man in the orange mask finally steps between the moles and the cards. Calmly, he announces that he is Pumpkin Knight, a D-rank killer ranked at 331. He raises his fists into a clean boxing guard and waits. The knife comes first. From the B rank, a bystander will later call Yihyun. Confidently, he promises the masked man that he will die here and now by his hands. Pumpkin Knight blocks the opening thrust and repeats his introduction as if the fight were an interview. He claims to be the nation's top boxer, a medalist from the National Sports Festival. The watching D ranks write him off instantly, because a boxer does not beat a B rank. What follows looks exactly like the beating they predicted. Yihyun lands flurry after flurry, and the orange mask snaps back with every one of them. The Alliance groans, convinced their champion is being taken apart in front of them. Only Tiger Swallowtail, watching from the side, notices what the movement actually is. Quietly, he identifies it as a head roll, a boxing evasion measured in centimeters. The masked man is slipping every single punch at the last possible instant. Nothing has touched him at all, and the flinching is a performance for the audience. Then Pumpkin Knight steps in once and throws one punch at full power. It lands on Yihyun's temple and drops him unconscious before the follow-up arrives. Somewhere in the crowd, a man with a 2 tattooed on him swears that Yihyun lost to a D rank. Another voice shouts that rank 2 is running away. And a bald recruit kneels to reclaim the stolen cards. Shortly after, Yuna, Biggie and Junior find the masked man and greet him as Sangdo. Proudly, Biggie claims that he personally beat a B rank killer, and Junior claims exactly the same thing. Neither fight was shown, and neither brother offers a single verifiable detail. Tiger Swallowtail arrives with a sharper observation than anyone else has managed. Curiously, he points out that Pumpkin Knight has not fought with his arms even once. He proposes a fight with their volunteer cards on the table as the stake. The offer dies mid-sentence when the area is declared restricted with a 5-minute evacuation warning. A phone call pulls Tiger Swallowtail away before he can press the point. The group works out the shape of the trap while they walk. The restricted zones keep shrinking, which will eventually squeeze every contestant into the same patch of ground. Supplies are hidden inside the shrinking ring, so the D ranks will be forced to hunt each other. Our hero admits privately that this is no ordinary rank test. Then he hears gunshots, which should be impossible because every weapon was confiscated on arrival. He leaves Yuna behind and runs toward the sound alone. Elsewhere in the forest, Tiger Swallowtail reports into the voice he calls Boss Man. Flatly, he says there is no old man on the island matching Peter's description. He announces that he is heading back, and the voice tells him he is going to regret that. The voice addresses him as Thaddeus without any title attached to it. Then it explains the actual purpose of the island in a calm, conversational register. It intends to kill every single D-rank contestant standing on that ground. Whoever is still breathing after that has to be Peter. The pages never confirm that this voice belongs to Raphael, and the name is never printed in the call. Tiger Swallowtail listens to a mass execution being scheduled and says nothing at all. Meanwhile, in the rain, Corey is telling 2 D-rank girls exactly the same thing from the other side. Urgently, he warns them that the rank test is a trap with killers planted inside it. He says the B ranks stationed among them can take on hordes of D ranks by themselves. He gets as far as saying that they are at, and an explosion swallows the rest. One of the girls screams his name into the smoke. Elsewhere, a masked killer with a wide grin and a nose ring finds Yuna alone in the trees. His name card reads Haixingsing, registered D rank 4th, true rank B, specialty unlisted. Pleasantly, he tells her she is a gorgeous young lady and that he will not be killing her. He says he intends to take her home with him instead. Two shapes crash out of the brush before he finishes the sentence. Biggie and Junior Dokko seize an arm each and put themselves between him and Yuna. Grinning, Biggie says they are a lot like Apostle Peter right now since Peter shows up at crucial moments. He informs Haixingsing that he has to get through the two of them first. Yuna offers to fight beside them and Biggie tells her to save her strength for later. He frames it as a small step every one of them has to clear on their own. The brothers snap into a synchronized double flying armbar on both of his arms at once. Haixingsing shrugs the whole thing off without changing expression. He explains that the average grip strength of a chimpanzee runs around 300 against a human's 90. His card updates on the page to read immense grip strength. He closes a hand on Junior's throat and nearly puts him out. Contemptuously, he tells them they will never come close to becoming like Peter. Not in a million years. The story cuts to a question asked somewhere else by a man in a red cap and sunglasses. He wants to know why those two want to become like Peter so badly. 11 years ago at the Yeonggwang orphanage, two nameless boys were known only as those two. A diary falls off a shelf while they are prowling the building. The handwriting belongs to a war orphan the other children mocked with the nickname Dokko Dai. The entries run from July of 1967 through October of 1968 without a name attached to them. Then on April the 29th of 1970, the boy is finally given one. He writes that he will never bring shame to the name he was given, and the name is Peter. The two orphans stare at the page and realize whose childhood they are holding. One of them says he had no idea Peter was also alone as a kid. On the spot, they take a surname out of a dead man's diary. The older one declares that since he is older, he will be Biggie Dokko. The younger one is assigned Junior Dokko and accepts it immediately. The listening men scoff that neither of them will ever become like Peter. The man in the red cap offers one amendment, that it might be possible if they come together and fight as one. What follows is a training montage of two boys bound hand and foot to each other. They dodge tied together, fight tied together, and use the toilet in sync. That humiliation is the visible origin of the armbar they threw a moment ago. Back in the forest, Haixingsing dismisses the memory as irrelevant. He says it changes nothing because the brothers are still D-rank trash. Then he turns away from them and leaves Yuna standing alone. She answers with a thin wire and a small weighted head that he never sees coming. Mockingly, he guesses that she was trained by Peter himself. She denies it flatly, saying she has never been trained by Peter. Something in her stance registers on him as more menacing than both brothers combined. She drops into a full offensive posture and tells him she will show him what she has learned. The fight moves through the trees and he uses every trunk as a shield. Sneeringly, he calls her princess and reminds her that she is nothing but a D-rank ranked at 335. He boasts that he has been in this game for 17 years. The rope dart is devastating in open air and nearly useless in a forest. That exact weakness was the first thing her teacher ever named out loud. In flashback, Sangdo sets the lesson on a pool table instead of a training mat. Evenly, he tells her the weapon dies in an environment built to render it useless. He tells her to make her own path out of that problem. Around the same stretch of time, Biggie and Junior complain bitterly about the shared room training he is running. He checks on the two of them and asks after Yuna in the same breath. She spent those months drilling the dart against obstacles thousands of times. In the drilling, she finally understands what the pool table was for. He had been feeding her directional hints through the angles of the game the entire time. In the present, the dart finds him. Biggie and Junior lock down his arms while he is still off balance. Yuna is already above him, dropping out of a tree with her knee leading. She recalls the physics lesson about a high-speed fall landing like a truck. The knee arrives and Haixingsing goes down bloodied and unconscious. Biggie and Junior celebrate by asking whether they just took down a B-rank killer. Half seriously, they wonder aloud whether that automatically makes them B-ranks now. The pages never print his rank in that scene, so the promotion stays a joke. Then a gun comes up out of the trees behind them. Waiju Zhu steps out with his card reading D-rank, 2nd true rank B, 27th specialty shooting. Coldly, he informs the three of them that this is the end of the line. He shoots the rope dart out of play with one round and promises them all headshots. Yuna has no weapon, no distance, and no plan left. Out of nowhere, a red-haired man in glasses walks into the clearing. For 1 second, Yuna mistakes him for Sangdo. He introduces himself at full volume as Tiger Swallowtail, a D-rank killer. Then he walks straight up to the barrel and dares Waiju Zhu to shoot. Zhu lowers the pistol and brings up something enormous instead, a cannon pressed into Tiger Swallowtail's face. The last thing on the page is his own quiet realization that this one he really cannot dodge. The barrel stays where it is, pressed flat into Tiger Swallowtail's face. A woman in glasses walks out of the trees and takes over the game. Cheerfully, she tells the gunman that a barrel in a face is not exciting enough. She orders him to put the gun into his own mouth instead. That way, she explains, the target standing in front of him truly cannot dodge anything. The gunman obeys her and closes his teeth around the steel. Tiger Swallowtail runs the arithmetic without moving his feet an inch. If he stands still, the round goes through him from point-blank range. If the man fires from that position, the man dies with him. Both answers end the same way, so he goes looking for a third. In one motion, he lifts the gunman clean off the ground. The arm folds backward with a crack before the finger reaches the trigger. The body drops into the dirt and stops moving. Another man steps out of the ring and announces himself as a first-class marksman of the Black Snake clan. He opens fire from close range with the pistol held in one hand. The onlookers count the misses out loud and the tally reaches 26. Someone at the back says there is no way this one is a D rank. Calmly, Tiger Swallowtail explains that firing one-handed cuts a shooter's accuracy in half. Then he adds that firing at him personally drops that accuracy to 0. The kicks arrive as a white blur across the whole panel. Dozens of them land inside a single instant. The marksman folds without a sound and does not get back up. Standing over him, Tiger Swallowtail suggests the marksman needs to drink more milk. The watchers around the clearing have stopped treating this as entertainment. A woman with a long ponytail watches all of it from the tree line. Quietly, she thinks that this man is like Sangdo. She adds that there is no way he is an actual D rank. He looks back at her with something close to recognition on his face. Somewhere behind his eyes, a voice tells him the whole continent used to fear him. The pages never settle which of the two says that line out loud. Elsewhere, the story leaves the forest entirely for a place called the Kowloon Hell Zone. It is a lawless slum stacked out of concrete, cable, and rust. The word carried about it is short and does not vary. Anyone who enters the Hell Zone will not leave alive. Not even the most powerful figures in the world are safe inside it. Into that place walks an armed column of the Black Snake clan. At the head of it is Phelan Long, third-generation boss of the clan. His card prints the title plainly beside a bald, heavily tattooed head. A cigarette burns in his teeth and his ears are lined with piercings. Beside him walks Waiju Zhu, listed on his own card as right-hand man. Their plan is not complicated. They intend to take the Hell Zone and keep it. At the gate, a disfigured old survivor tries to turn them around. Half his face is scar tissue and one of his eyes is gone. Wearily, he advises them to pray they are among the chosen few who leave. The clan beats him down for the trouble and walks straight past. Inside, the Hell Zone is quiet in a way that does not feel abandoned. No residents come out to meet them. No shots come back from the windows. Among the stacked crates, they find one man standing alone and unarmed. Flatly, Phelan Long tells his men to shoot him. Dozens of barrels open up at once from a few steps away. The volley fills the alley with smoke and red mist. Bodies are thrown through that mist as the magazines empty. When the firing stops, the man is standing exactly where he was. There is not one mark anywhere on him. He says a single word and the word is enough. What happens after that is never shown blow by blow. It is shown afterward instead. Sometime later, Waiju Zhu finds his boss lying in the open. Phelan Long is beaten past recognition and barely pulling air. The men dragging him out give the attacker a name. They call him the god of Kowloon. They say he used only his bare hands, no blade and no gun. One of them says the boss no longer has a single bone in his body. Waiju Zhu carries that limp weight away from the crates himself. The god of Kowloon lets them walk out on purpose. He spares Phelan Long so the clan can carry the story outward for him. He wants the world to hear that entering the Hell Zone means certain death. Then he turns his attention to the 3 survivors still running. Coldly, he informs them that the 3 of them are also doomed. The final thought on the page belongs to a speaker the art never confirms. Whoever it is admits to not knowing why that man is on this island. The same voice concludes the island will soon turn into a sea of corpses. Back on Dead Island, that sentence begins collecting evidence. Terrified contestants push through the forest whispering the name of the god of Kowloon. A red-haired figure walks away from a fresh corpse without hurrying. The line about a sea of corpses follows him out of the frame. Meanwhile, at Glory's VVIP lounge, the boss of the organization is taking a massage. An aide comes in holding a tablet and does not enjoy his job. Nervously, he reports that the B-rank assassin sent to the island is dying. The 2 of them arrive at the same conclusion at the same time. The aide says the name out loud and the name is Apostle Peter. One of Raphael's eyes lights up yellow, the pupil narrowing to a vertical slit. Evenly, he demands the island's security footage be brought to him personally. He does not want a summary and he does not want a report. He intends to watch the recording with his own eyes. On the island, two contestants run through the trees from something behind them. The vests read 321 and 328. The one in front wears clown makeup, a green afro wig and a brown top hat. His card names him Joker, rank D, 321st. It lists him as a former killer for Yeonggwang and a current killer for Glory. Behind them, a bystander is clubbed to the ground and does not rise. The survivors recognize the man holding the club and repeat his name in horror. His card reads Mikhail, rank B, 14th, ex-prison warden, specialty unlisted. The story attached to him is that he put down an entire prison riot alone. Joker throws a knife at him, which is the one trick he is known for. Mikhail swats it out of the air without changing his expression. Then he brings out the weapons he actually favors, which are sharpened human bones. He took them from the severed head of a victim he killed earlier. One of them goes through Joker's stomach and pins him. The second comes down across the top of his skull. Dismissively, Mikhail says the man was nothing but a D rank. Elsewhere in the camp, a young man wearing the number 336 stands among a knot of D ranks. He says nothing at all and his face stays completely blank. The group around him is openly uncomfortable and keeps a careful distance. Tiger Swallowtail moves through them as the overseer of the whole exercise. He jokes about their little pumpkin friend and asks after him by that name. Then he needles two of the group for looking like they have seen a ghost. Yuna keeps her mouth shut and watches him work the crowd. She remembers this man killing an armed B-rank barehanded in a single instant. Privately, she counts the bodies stacking up across the island and does the math. If Tiger Swallowtail works out that Sangdo is behind those kills, everything ends. She tries to steer the person beside her away from the group. The bystanders correct her at once and insist the person she is addressing is not Sangdo. Further along the tree line, the group finds the body of number 1. He was the top-ranked D-rank on the whole island and his skull is shattered. Someone says out loud that only Sangdo could put down a fighter at that level. The theory holds for roughly 1 minute. They then find the real 336 face down in the dirt and badly beaten. His face is bloodied and he answers none of the questions put to him. Tiger Swallowtail refuses the easy version of events. He crouches beside the corpse and reads the footprints pressed into the ground around it. He reconstructs the kill in order and narrates it while he works. First came a low kick that broke the man's ankle from the side. Then came an aerial strike that dropped straight down through the top of the skull. Dryly, he points out that none of that resembles boxing in any way. Their little pumpkin friend fights with his fists and nothing else. Whoever did this fought like something else entirely. He turns away from the corpse toward the silent 336 sitting in the dirt. Directly, he tells the boy he is hiding a big secret. The boy gives him nothing back, which is its own kind of answer. Screams come up from the seaside before the questioning goes any further. The escape boats are anchored down there, which makes the beach the only way off. The whole group runs for the sound. What waits on the sand stops them where they stand. Rows of D-ranks lie dead in the open beside the anchored boats. Standing over them are roughly 20 men nobody in the group recognizes. Shaved heads, black tactical vests, shoulders built like doorframes, none of them breathing hard. The card that prints across them reads Raphael's minions, estimated rank B disguised as D-ranks. The line under it finally explains what the Culling always was. Their orders were to kill every D-rank on this island. The cards, the count, the 48 hours, all of it was packaging. The test existed to gather hundreds of low-rank killers into one place with no exit. Sangdo counts the men on the sand and measures them against the ladder he knows. Not even an A rank could defeat a whole army of 20 B ranks. He also knows Raphael has the island's cameras and has asked for the footage himself. Fighting here at full strength puts his real face in front of the boss. Quietly, he pulls the orange mask down over his head. The vest across his chest reads 331 and the crowd sees the pumpkin knight. Even masked, he still has no answer for 20 B ranks standing in a ring. Before he finds one, a shadow settles onto the sand beside him. Tiger Swallowtail steps up shoulder to shoulder and squares his feet. Loudly, he informs the 20 that the two of them will take them on together. They put their backs against each other with the boats behind and the ring closing. Whether the man at his spine is an ally, an examiner, or a hunter who already knows the answer is nowhere on the page. The masked boy sets his stance and the 20 start walking in. And that's where this recap ends. What did you think? Let me know your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments.